Hey, well, first of all, I'd like to say, and I is gonna find me, because I want to be a part of this fucking dumb wannabe tennis tour.
I think they got his testicles so far up their mouths that this is bullshit,
I'm not thinking about that right now. I'm just thinking about having won the world title and hopefully trying to win another one someday. You just drop in and just smack the drop down, say bah!
Well, I'll tell you, Stu, I did battle some humongous waves.
Oh, just the paper, please?
Oh, surf looks good on it.
Not bad.
Ain't that swell with Jed and Vaughn.
Oh, those guys are back!
Get a haircut.
All right, we're on. Well, yeah. Fucking welcome to the show, mate. We are big fans of the entire McNamara clan, and it couldn't be a better time to be talking to you because it is kicking off in the islands. First big pipe swell of the season. Your son-in-law, is it? Iala Stewart got the wave of the day, if not the winter. Where were you in proximity to that swell?
So I was actually down at Haleiwa watching my sons in the contest down there. And I missed Ayala's wave by about 10 minutes.
It's a bummer, but I'm sure you've seen it about 1,000 times since then. It's on dead set every channel of surfing right now. How does that make you feel, man? Because yeah, Iala's a guy who you've basically raised from like the age of 12 or something. He's a protege of yours. He's part of your family. Must be amazing to finally see him get the just desserts for all the work he's put in out there.
Yeah, I mean, Ayala, his nickname is the Humble Hawaiian, or Ayala Dala. At about 6 years old, him and Makai were in the contest, the Menahuni together. And Makai had won first place. Ayala got second. And I told Makai, hey, go over there and give that kid your board. And so Makai gave Ayala his board that he won because I knew Ayala needed it more than Makai did. And actually that year was the year that the Menahuni contest started to give away the surfboards to people who weren't surfed. So it's kind of a cool rule that they put in place so that they make sure that they're giving away the surfboards to kids who need them. But yeah, they were 6. They met each other. He said a few words. He comes from a big family in town, awesome family. And the next 7 years, Makai and Ayala surfed a lot of heats together, and Ayala actually had probably a winning record over Makai. And we never really spoke too much, a little hi uncle. I remember specifically driving to town one day, and I had all the kids and we were going surfing Ala Moana, and I saw this little kid on his bike with a fro just riding his bike, like just real adamant about making his way to Ala Moana. And I looked and it was Ayala. And so I only said about 5 words to the kid to Ayala in those 7 years. When he was 12 years old, he was surfing Rocky Point, and he was with a friend. I believe it was a bodyboarder kid that we knew. And after surfing, they came by the house and they were like, "Can we use the water, Uncle?" And I was like, "Yeah, go ahead right there." And I went on with my day and came back that evening, and I went up into look in my son's room and Landon's room, and lo and behold, there's Ayala sitting there playing video games. And that was the day that he basically claimed sovereignty, and he became my Hanai son. And we moved him into the tree house, and he spent a few years living in our tree house with an ocean view and mountain view. And check out the Humble Hawaiian. It's on YouTube.
Wow. That's an amazing story, man. And it's one of the sick things about Hawaii that, people like yourself and many others take such an interest in looking after those, less fortunate. Not saying Iala is that, but, you look at Mason Ho and Sheldon and, the way Johnny Boy Gomes was taken in by the singer. Israel Kamakawi. I mean, I'm going to butcher his name. There's no way I can say that name properly. But just that's a culture that you have in Hawaii where yeah, you guys really take care of each other. There's like especially in the surfing community, and you know, guys from like, say, if you relocate there from mainland America, Eddie Rothman's another classic example where there's this like beautiful merging of or this kind of taking on of the Asia Pacific identity, which being an Australian and being a part of the Asia Pacific as well, I can really relate to it. And growing up in a Polynesian heavy community in Sydney, and like as well as Asian, Filipino, Thai, Maori, etc. Like I love this kind of idea of bringing ourselves away from the American and European style of doing things and connecting more with an Asia Pacific identity. And I see that in Hawaii a lot. It's a rad thing.
Yeah, I mean, we're all about the kids over here. We take care of the kids. You know, I spent my life surfing Rocky Point, and when Koa Rothman was 7, 8 years old, Makua Rothman when he was 7, 8, 9 years old, Ezra Sit, you know, all these any Grom who came out to Rocky Point with like a sparkle in their eye, I would look over and say, follow Uncle, and I'll take them out to the peak and kind of let everybody know, hey, Grom's going on this one. So a lot different than the mainland. In the mainland, like Steamer Lane and all over California, they kind of like, they do it differently. Probably in Australia too. They make the Groms stay inside. They heckle the Groms. I think in Hawaii, it's something where we're growing up with the aloha spirit and knowing that this is where surfing started. We're always looking out for the kids and always helping them.
Rad, man. And tell us a bit about your own story. Like, where did you grow up? You know, tell us a bit about your folks, your family history, stuff like that.
Yep. Give me just 1 sec. Sorry.
Yeah, no sweat.
Sorry, I have this mouth denture thing that I wear sometimes, and it's bothering me. It makes me talk weird. I'm getting some implants, but anyway, my brother and I, we moved from Northern California. I was born in Berkeley, California, in 1969. My mom was 17, my dad was, yeah. So 1969 in Berkeley, California was a pretty crazy place.
That's an auspicious year, mate. To be born in Berkeley, California, the home of LSD and stuff.
Oh yeah, I was born in 1969, the winter of '69 in California, which was a big winter here in Hawaii. I moved to Hawaii in 1978, and I believe that's the year that Uncle Eddie Aikau passed away. So there's some, I think I was like 6 months. Came in October, but anyway, some significance to some of the years there. Me and my brother moved to the North Shore of Oahu from day one. We lived down in Wailua in a place called Cement City. It's the technically it was kind of the ghetto area. It was a military area. It was the cheapest place to live. And I don't want to go too crazy on the story, but we started from nothing. And we had government support, subsidized living. You know, we basically had to learn how to make things happen, and spent about 5 years from 1978 to 83 down in Wailua surfing Haleiwa. Kerry Terakina, Marvin Foster, all the Haleiwa locals, the Dahlin family, Earl Dahlin. That was when the Menehune Surf Championship started. Rel Sun and a bunch of the ladies, they started the Menehune Surfing Contest. 1980, I surfed in my first event, the Menehune. So Haleiwa is where me and my brother's heart is. Haleiwa is where we learned how to surf. True, we were Haleiwa boys and Wailua boys, going to school at Wailua Elementary and Wailua High School, and just being the haoles that had to deal with a lot of shit. and there was literally gangsters. There was a gang called the Blue Caps, and they rode around on bikes and chased haoles like us down and tried to beat us up, and we'd have to watch the roads we go on, and yeah, some crazy stuff. And so yeah, we learned to surf at Haleiwa, and the surf center used to have ping pong table there, and they would let us leave our surfboards there, and it's like a family, this ohana vibe. They took care of us. We had no dad. We had our mom. She did what she could. She did her best. And yeah, it was, so let's just say humble beginnings. If you want to know what humble beginnings is, that's what it was.
Yeah, I understand you guys lived on food stamps, in that kind of subsidized living for 5 or so years. And I see crazy parallels between so many of the the white Hawaiian surfing greats, like Jamie O'Brien, same deal, single dad, mum skipped out on him, John Florence, single mum. Like it's a strange synchronicity in all your stories, but I guess hanging out with Jamie, I can recall him telling me, like, him and Jason Federico, when they were Groms, exactly the same story that you're telling me, where they had to fight a lot, man. And like, it was a version of, you can only call it racism. I mean, it's just getting picked on because of the color of your skin and your ethnicity. And that was Hawaii. So I think it's helpful for a lot of people who maybe haven't spent time in Hawaii to understand that those who grow up there with white skin, you are targeted, and you grow up tough.
Yes. Yeah. So for me, I've always been that guy who understands how to navigate through things. And I made friends with the gnarly locals, and we would hang out and smoke a bunch of weed together. And I would find the biggest, gnarliest guys in the school, and those guys would be my boys. And whether it was surfing or in school or wherever I went, I really made friends with the right people to make sure that I didn't get my ass kicked every other day. Definitely had a lot of issues in growing up as a white. I call it once a haole, always a haole. That's my story. You got to be built like Pancho Sullivan, like a block, and kind of like, to get respect here in Hawaii as a white skinned surfer. Unfortunately, it's very tough. And unfortunately, when you have dark skin, I'm not racist any way, shape, or form. I respect all cultures, all people. Hawaiians, if you're 1% Hawaiian, 100% Hawaiian, I respect them more than your average, because their ancestors are the reason why I made a living through surfing, and because they have been treated pretty bad as well in the history of Hawaii. But I have some Hawaiian friends that are very close to pure Hawaiian, and they tell me, Liam, you're more Hawaiian than a lot of friends of mine that are Hawaiian, because you have aloha. And so that's kind of key. If you're here in Hawaii, you live here in Hawaii, you're born and raised here in Hawaii, you're connected and you know what aloha is. And yeah, I was not really a guy that showed my aloha too much through my career, but I was instilled with aloha throughout my childhood and really recognized the importance of spreading aloha.
Mate, it's a great message, and it reminds me of the great Martin Luther King speech. I have a dream that my children will be judged on the content of the character, and not the color of their skin. And I mean, that's what the aloha spirit is. Like, anyone can take that on and share that, and really that's what you should be judged on, as opposed to these things that are outside of your control, i.e. The color of your skin, the person who gave birth to you. So it's sick that people recognize that in you. And I mean, we're going to get into some of the work that you're doing for Hawaiian surfing, and that you've always done for Hawaiian surfing. And it's, it's proper. Like, I can see why you have the respect that you have now. And I guess, like, back in the early days, was surfing Like, was ripping hard like a way to also get respect? Was it a motivating force? You know, you're poor, you're getting beaten up, but I guess surfing, if you can rip, there's always going to be a place for you in the hierarchy. People will always respect that in surfing if you rip.
Yeah, I mean, it took a while. My brother and I, we started surfing. I basically started surfing at 10, but technically 9. I really, really got into surfing at 10. And, by 16, I was in the Pipe Masters. So my trajectory was pretty fast as far as being able to just get better. When me and my brother were pretty athletic. Having a brother pushing you and putting in a lot of time in the water. In 1983, we moved up to Sunset Beach area, and that's where things changed. There's a guy named Fielding Benson. His dad is Colonel Al Benson. He made all the classic surf movies, Free Ride, Follow the Sun, all these legendary movies. I remember coming up to Sunset Beach with him one day. We went to Bobby Owens' house, and I went in Bobby Owens' house because Fielding Benson was friends with Bobby Owens, and I was just in awe up at Sunset at this legendary guy's house that I had posters of him on my wall. And then moving down to Velzyland area, we started surfing V-Land and Rocky Point, 83, 84, 85. And that's when we got to know all a lot of gnarly guys up here. Cheeseburger, Keone Nozaki's dad, Japanese guy, kind of a legend in the Japanese thing. I got to know a lot of Japanese people, and one thing led to another, and it turned into us getting Japanese sponsors and this and that. But V-Land Rocky Point is where it all started for us, and then we ventured down to Pipeline, and yeah, as in 1985, I think technically the first guy to do an aerial at Rocky Point, and I started doing aerials and started getting respect for that. And then I started charging Pipeline and started getting respect for that. But it was not easy at all. Getting a spot out at Pipeline and getting waves at Rocky Point, nothing came easy.
No, mate, I can imagine. And I mean, that's one of the things that's often overlooked in your career is that you were an aerial innovator right around the same time as Christian Fletcher. I'm not exactly sure of the timelines. You might have even been before. My history's not that good. But the progression of Pipeline in the mid 80s, man, like far out, that must have been such an intimidating place to try and get waves and establish yourself in the hierarchy there and the lineup. Who were some of the heavy hitters and how did the lineup function at that point?
Well, at that point, you still had, I was fortunate to surf 1 year with Rory Russell before he retired. I surfed 5 years with Jerry Lopez. I mean, we had Dane Kealoha, his brother Mike Kealoha, who people need to know who he is. He's amazing. We had Tony Moniz, Max, Mickey Marvin, Max, Jackie Dunn. There's a guy named John Dam. I mean, we have Mike Akima. I mean, there's so many underground guys and so many heavy guys from around the island and around the state. There was probably 50 guys that were as gnarly as can be, and you did not want to get in their way. And on any given day, the crowd would consist of 50 people, and let's say 30 or 40 of them were gnarly as can be. These days, on any given day, there's 50 guys out, and 40 of them probably shouldn't be out there. So, and back then there was no social media, and if you went on the wrong way, if you hooted at one of these guys, you might as well leave for a month because you're going to be kicked out of the lineup and you'll probably be slapped. And so yeah, I just at 15, 16, I started surfing pipe. I went out there. I was like, there's no way I'm going to get a wave in this pack right here. So I ventured deeper to the place where you saw Ayala caught his wave, a little deeper, than that, but they call it Waukita Peak. It eventually came Waukita Peak. I was forced. The only option I had to get a wave at Pipeline was to either go out there at dawn, which I would do, or surf around the crowd, which is very rare. But I just said, you know what, that I'm going to go paddle back deep over here and look for that wave that the gnarly guys they can't get because they're in a different section. So my first few years, and technically my whole career surfing Pipeline, I kind of surfed a different area. And that area was named Waukita Peak. Waukita will tell you it's not his peak. It's kind of our peak. And there's other guys, I see a lot of these guys, they come to town, and a lot of foreigners come to town and they kind of sneak back there, and that's where they'll get their waves. And part of me's like, good on you, mate. Good on you, brother. Another part of me's like, nah, you don't deserve to be back here, but it's all good.
Mate, that's so cosmic, because Wakita, he becomes a great friend of yours over the years, and you end up employing him at your surf shop, the North Shore Surf Shop there. And is he still working there? I've spent a bit of time with Wakita, written an article or a profile on him for Tracks Magazine a few years ago, and his story is amazing. That Japanese push that he was a part of, and you talk about how hard it was for you and your generation and ilk. It was also very difficult for his. He has some hilarious stories about some of his mates getting just punched in the head, like through their gaff helmet, like just wild hidings in the lineup, and stuff like that. How heavy was it? Talk to us about some of the localism and intimidation tactics that you witnessed firsthand when people blew it and got it wrong.
So for me, I was very fortunate that Jerry Lopez became an uncle of mine, basically. I got allowed into the Jerry Lopez house, Herbie Fletcher, the Fletchers, and Jerry Lopez house. Just to get your foot in that door, and past that gate into that house was an accomplishment in itself. It goes back to how when I grew up, I kind of knew steps to take that are gonna get me respect or get me, surrounded by the people that I can feed off of. So the first time I went into the Jerry house, I grabbed a rake and I start cleaning up the leaves. I start sweeping. The first surf line cam came in. My job was to take the hose and clean the cam. Right next door, we had a couple years later was the Benji Weatherly and Momentum and Slater and Dorian and everybody next door. It was like yin and yang. It was like the rowdy house, the rough boys, the gnarly house, and then the softer guys that maybe were more technically sound, but they didn't get, they got a lot less waves than the guys at Jerry's house, but they're great surfers. And it was just this really classic time to be a part of surfing. Yeah, there's a couple guys that I don't care how big, how small, or how gnarly they seemed. There were people that you just did not, if you hooted and said, oh, hell, they did not like that, and you were going to get slapped. If you took off on the wave and they were going on the same wave and you bottom turned and got anywhere near them, you're getting slapped. So many times I would go for waves I had to straighten out just to avoid, kind of like if you look at the interference rule, if you're taking off and the guy with priority, you straighten out. Well, that's the same deal. They all had priority. And there was a lot of them, and they were we're talking Bird, Mahi Lona, we're talking Marvin Foster, the two guys who invented the grab rail. I'm not saying those were the guys who would slap me or I would be, that. I don't really want to get into who's who of names of who was the most feared. But Denki Aloha, he's definitely was at the top of the totem pole of the guys. And so I'm out there with Denki Aloha, Marvin Foster, Johnny Boy Gomes, Max Madero. So I'm out there with these guys that you can't hoot at them. you can't go on the same wave with them. You definitely don't want to disrespect them, but you want to catch waves too. So you got to figure out, you got to navigate that. And yeah, I seen a lot of stuff go down. Definitely a lot of intimidating situations for other people. I got to surf with Chappie Jennings and Sean Thompson and Rabbit and all those guys. I got to see kind of how they navigated the lineup out there. Martin Potter, Tom Carroll. I mean, it was, if you grew up in the 80s, the mid 80s to late 80s was when it was a whole nother world. It was as core as it could ever be. And the list of people that were dominating Pipeline in that era, in that late 80, early 90 time, I don't think there's ever going to be able to be that level of hierarchy, that level of ability and respect ever again in the history of Pipeline.
I love it, man. I love it. It's such an iconic chapter of surfing where board technology and performance meets head on with indigenous culture at the ultimate proving ground. And it's just a freaking, mate, it was gladiatorial stuff. And what did you make of, these hungry foreigners? You mentioned Rabbit, you mentioned Sean Thompson, you mentioned Tom Carroll. These guys are coming to Hawaii. They're coming to the North Shore. They know they're up against it. Rabbit's already had the shit beaten out of him. And yet he's still turning up at Pipe. He's still trying to navigate the hierarchy and the lineup, and fucking ripping. Those guys surfed it so good and put in so much time out there. Mark Richards as well. Like, what did you take away from those guys and their approach to the waves there?
So for me, like, it was a couple years prior when all the shit kind of hit the fan for all the South Africans and Australians and all the stuff from the movies I've seen and stuff. So I kind of got there and got out there and surfed 1 or 2 years with a lot of these guys. And they had definitely humbled themselves a lot. You could tell that they weren't out there trying to have they didn't want to be like a deer in headlights. They're out there to do their thing. And most of them would, show up for the comps and surf the comps and free surf a little here and there. Tom Carroll, Tom Carroll is my idol, was my idol, still is my idol. I love the guy. I mean, he would live 2 doors down from me. Quicksilver House was right near me. But yeah, all the older guys that had all the situations in the 70s and early 80s, I got to see a few of those guys. And yeah, I mean, they kind of had a little bit of a, let's say, they had a target on their back, but they seemed to kind of move past that era where they were being harassed. But I think that was a time when the next generation, your Glenn Wintons and Barton Lynches and Damian Hardmans and these guys actually came in without the attitude, like the bravado of that their guys from the previous generation. So I was there during the transition from when it became a situation where everybody had a sponsor and every sponsor had every surfer kind of was Quicksilver, Billabong, or this or that, and they all kind of got connected, and we all kind of, I think all the Hawaiians in general, there was basically a truce, maybe not really a truce, but like, hey, I think surfing went in a good direction where guys started to get respect and didn't get fucked with for no reason and didn't get beat up quite as much anymore.
Yeah. Oh man, it's such a hard one. Obviously we love Rabbit here in Oz and on this program in particular, and knowing his story and, single mom, like super poor, and surfing was his way out, but also, he put it on the map, and I can see like why there was like the hunger to better his situation and use surfing as the vehicle to better that situation. I can see how it manifested in just I look at Rabbit as very similar in attitude to someone like Medina, where they come from nothing, and they're just, nothing's going to stop them from achieving the goals that they've set for themselves.
Yep.
And because they don't have any other choice, there's nothing to go back to. And it's just unfortunate that it panned out the way it did. But it makes for one of the most compelling chapters in surfing history. And the fact that you're there just on the backside of that, or on the backside of Dahui's absolute reign of terror towards foreign surfers, and you're like in this fascinating place where you're on the inner sanctum of the Lopez crew, and you're able to navigate that lineup as a Howley, but not as a foreigner, mate. Wow, what a unique position to hold.
Yeah, I mean, I want to talk a little more about like Gary Elkerton, Munga Berry. Like Gary Elkerton would be an example of a guy who was from that area, that was there, little younger than the Rabbits. And Gary was one of those guys who still was, he had a lot of bravado and he pumped his chest. He was a gnarly surfer, and he kind of continued Aussie, I surfer kind of vibe. Major respect to him, the stuff he did at Sunset, and, unfortunately not getting a world title and stuff, all those stories. Gary, what's his name? Glenn Winton. I really like Glenn Winton a lot, because Glenn Winton and me is funny because we both were wearing these web gloves at one time. Me, him, and Tony Moniz. We're all riding for Gorilla Grip. Glenn Winton's a guy that, if you don't know, look him up. He's an amazing surfer. Really made a mark on Pipeline in my eyes. And there's definitely others. I mean, Munga Berry, an amazing guy. I remember Billabong when it first started, looking at Billabong in the background there. There's a guy named Buddy McRae, one-arm kneeboarder, and he got Billabong trunks in like 1983, 84. He got these boxes of Billabong trunks. They're the Bermuda ones that go past it's funny because I got Billabongs that I bought for like $20 from what you call Buddy McRae when they first arrived. And then I ended up getting some Quicksilver shorts from Richard Wilcott when I was hanging out at this year. And I was with Richard Cram and Chappie and Rabbit, Jeff Hornbaker. I got to go to the house over there at Keiki, and those shorts were the ones that, if you didn't watch yourself, your nuts are going to fall out of those. They were so high up. But it's just funny I was a part and got to witness the first Billabong shorts come to the North Shore. And then the shorts of the 70s and 80s from Quicksilver, just funny stuff, funny part of the history. And, but yeah, there's not one you could, if you think of anybody that you can think about from Pipeline or the North Shore in the late 80s, early 90s. I mean, I probably have some knowledge about, what they did, guys like Danny Wills and, all the guys trying to fight for titles. I got to see all that. In the 83, 84, I got to watch my first Pipe Masters, and that's when I really got to watch 83, 84, 85. I remember specifically coming down and watching Joey Baran running up and down the beach, and he won the Pipe Masters. I do remember those crazy waves. There's a one that really sticks out to me is there's a event in 83, 84, 85. It was 15 feet. It was Rabbit and Tony Moniz and these guys were pulling into, it was huge, and they were riding big boards and they were charging hard. And, this was heavy Pipeline. And, so I was really fortunate to see that. I didn't get to surf that many times with a lot of those guys, but I got to witness them at the ends of their careers, and it was a sight to see. They charged hard. Sean Thompson, Rabbit, all those iconic like waves that they rode at Pipeline in 80, 83, 84, 85. Those are the memories embedded into me and what made me want to ultimately be that guy.
Amazing, man. And some of those names you mentioned before too. I mean, a lot of our listeners, we hear the names a lot. Marvin Foster, Dane Kealoha, Mickey Nielsen, Johnny Boy Gomes. But one thing we don't get is much of an insight into like who these people really are, and you have that insight. Like, you know, can you give us some stories or insights or anecdotes into someone like Dane Kiloa, Jerry Lopez, even like, you know, just to give us an idea of who these people were at that point in their lives?
I mean, I think that I surf with a lot of Aussies, and there's probably some misconception with some of the guys in my era that like I had it out for the Aussies, and like I got a lot of Australian friends, and you know, I think this being that you guys are from Oz, you know, I'd love to not really talk. I mean, it'll be cool to talk about my connection with Australia.
Yeah.
My connection with surfing and Australians, because, you know, I really think there's a lot of story that is relevant to surfing. For example, like 1989, Mitch Thorson brought over the first prototype of the Gath helmet. Me and Tom Carroll were the first two surfers, along with a guy named Bruce Hansel, who lives in Indonesia, Bali, Uluwatu, makes surfboards. He has daughter Clinta Hansel, surfs really well. Me and Bruce Hansel used to share a helmet. We hid it under this guy, Mark Harlow's house, who's a legend, gnarly pipe surfer, Mark Harlow. So in 1988, I was in California and I was surfing trestles, and this was during the air time. Yeah, Christian Fletcher started doing airs around the same time I did, and the air thing, Justin Robertson, me, Christian, we were doing airs at trestles, and I kind of brought the air back to Hawaii, learned from them a little bit, this and that. But I got a board hit in my head. I cracked my eardrum, and then I broke my eardrum, cracked my skull, and almost died. And then I wanted to start wearing a helmet. I started wearing a helmet at Pipeline. Me and this guy, Bruce Hansel, were sharing a helmet. Tom Carroll was wearing he had a kayaking helmet. Me and Bruce Hansel were sharing this other kayaking helmet. I was tired of I wouldn't surf without the helmet on, so I was tired of waiting. So I went down to the ice skating rink. We have a ice palace. It's where you can skate on ice, like ice skating. I bought me a hockey helmet. So in 1989, I was using a hockey helmet. And then Mitch Thorson, out of the blue, shows up. And thankfully and totally appreciate, he handed me a Gath helmet. And I remember specifically the first time I used it was actually at Waimea Bay. I went out there and surfed like 20-foot Waimea wearing the helmet. And Carol started wearing them. So that was the start of the Gath helmet. A year later, 1990, me and my brother went to the Margaret River event. And there's a guy named John Adrian. I believe his kids are good surfers from Margaret River. John Adrian was business partners with Rick Gath. I got to stay at John Adrian's house. And Tom Carroll was staying there as well.
That would
Closest
be the
house to Margaret.
Yeah, that would be the father of Dino Adrian, who is one of the greats at North Point and Tombstones.
So Dino, your dad, I know I've spoke to them a few times. John Adrian let me stay at his house, fed me amazing food, took care of me. I would walk down to Margaret's. Me and my brother, Tom Carroll, was there. They have tennis courts, swimming pool, everything. This is way before all the stuff was built up over there. There was only a few houses, that whole neighborhood on the side there didn't even exist. They had a helmet for me, and they put microphones in the thing. I had my brother talking to me while I was in the water. I was on a man-on-man heat. I did pretty well in the contest, made it like about 4 rounds. And I was in a man-on-man heat with Michael Ramosi, Triple Crown champion. Michael Ramosi, awesome guy. Kind of the Jamie O'Brien of goofy footer with the look, the freckly, real nice guy. Michael Ramosi, like kind of the opposite of the Rabbit and those guys, very, very soft-spoken, let his surfing do the talking. So I ended up losing the heat, but it was classic, just the Gath helmet era. I was part of the start, me and Tom Carroll. From there forward, I was known as the helmet guy, and everybody knew me as, that's the guy who wears the helmet at Pipeline. Was with Rick Gath and Gath for decades. And John Adrian, thank you very much to you and your family for, taking me and taking care of me, and Rick Yass. I know you're gone, but means a lot to me. You saved my life many times, you guys.
Man, how many lives do you reckon those helmets have saved? And how many lives have you seen lost or irreparably changed due to not wearing helmets?
Yeah, that is, the other day when they all got that wave, I counted 50 guys in the lineup, counted 25 of them wearing helmets. I've never seen that in my life. With Oakley coming out with their new helmet, I actually gave all a brand new Oakley helmet that day. He was wearing, he didn't mention it, but he was wearing an Oakley helmet that day. But yeah, I've never seen 50% of the people in the water at Pipeline wearing a helmet. Saving a lot of lives for me. I was surfing Uluwatu in the 90s. I was inside corner, pulled into the barrel, smacked my head on the reef so hard in the back of the head where I probably would have knocked, like, very, very crucial back side of your head. I think I would have died. Another time I was surfing Laniakea, and this older guy on a bigger board dropped in on me. And as I'm dropping down bottom, turning, he comes out of the sky and just he lands right on top of my head. And he comes up yelling at me because all his fins are gone. All of his fins smacked me in the back of the head and broke off his board. Those are two outside of Pipeline, traveling around. I'd say 3, 4, 5 times, not in Hawaii, I would have died without the helmet on. At Pipeline, I'd probably say at least 3 to 5 times I probably would have died. Heavy injuries out there, hitting my head so hard, knocking out, hitting it again, waking up. Had some crazy injuries. And yeah, so, you look at Owen Wright, you look at all these guys, Owen Wrights, and then you look at all these funny Sally Fitzgibbons and all these people that put a helmet on because they had a broken eardrum or this or that, or because now the doctors told them you got to wear a helmet. Man, I tell you, if you're surfing over a reef break and it's dangerous, you should wear a helmet. And the funny story is, like, Mark Cunningham, legendary lifeguard body surfer, he would be like, I'd walk down on a sunny Sunday, and Eukai's perfect 2 feet, and there's 200 guys out, the sandbars. And he'd be like, "Hey, Liam, where's your helmet?" "I don't need a helmet, right?" He's like, "Right, it's more dangerous out here right now than it is at Pipeline." So I used to wear my helmet, like surfing Salt Creek and surfing Trestles and surfing. I specifically remember being out at Manly wearing my helmet, and all these guys hassling, "Hey, what you doing? Wait. It's like, I'm putting my life in your hands. I don't trust you. I'm going to wear a helmet." So the helmets have saved probably hundreds, if not thousands of lives. And I think as we speak here today, moving forward, they're going to save so many more lives. And we all owe that to Rick Yass.
Well said, mate. Well said. Rest in peace. And I'm right there with you, mate. Unfortunately had a fractured skull and bleeding on the brain from copping a board in the head from some kook as a grom. And basically, followed that up with a lot of combat sport concussions. But for me, the helmet is pretty well essential in most situations, particularly if you're surfing on your own and it's hollow. It doesn't matter what the bottom is, because a lot of the time it's your board that's going to knock you out. It only needs to nick you on the temple, or even the chin for that matter, to put you out underwater. And yeah, it is good to see the proliferation of helmets. I think Owen had a lot to do with that, the injury he suffered, and then making the helmet kind of cool again with just his insane performances at Chopes. Clark Grace, that was a fucking wild situation where the helmet actually got blown off him in the wipeout, but and then he drowns, he gets knocked out again. But if he doesn't have the helmet on, he's probably dead after the first beating. Look
at Tamayo Perry almost died, started wearing a helmet afterward. Kala Grace almost, was wearing it before. Kalani Chapman. Kalani and Kala, almost same exact thing happened to them. and I believe they were both like in competition. But a lot of these guys, the really cool thing right now is that a lot of surfers are now starting to wear a helmet before they get hurt, not waiting until after. Jerry Lopez once said, surfing pipeline, it's not a matter of if you're going to get hurt, it's when and how bad. And that can go for surfing in general. Surfing, it's not a matter of if you're going to get hurt, it's when and how bad. And so go buy a Gath helmet.
It's so true. It's one of the really rattling and inconvenient truths about surfing is that, yeah, as good as it is, it's a utopian existence and it adds so much purpose and passion to our lives. But it is a matter of when. And Tom Carroll just the other day, head planted at a wave he's grown up on, and more or less North Narrabeen, ends up. The early reports are a spinal injury, and he's he split his head, and like that's a guy who's so in touch with the universe, with safety, with risk. He meditates so much and makes such good decisions, and even he got done up at this late stage.
Yeah, Tommy needs to wear that helmet. Tommy, get that helmet on. You should have had your helmet on, but I'm sorry. Here's a good one for you, like Moana Jones. She came to me and asked if I had a helmet she could borrow 5 years ago. I gave her that. I said, no, this is for you. Gave it to her. And I believe she's not taken that helmet off, the exact one. It's like her lucky helmet. She's won all of her events with it. I'm 99% sure. But yeah, it's like, I love seeing people start wearing helmets. Moana Jones would probably be 50% responsible for the amount of girls who are wearing helmets now. 2 reasons why. Because of the show she puts on at Pipeline, because of how good she is, because of the respect she's earned. By putting on that helmet, she's saving lives. And so all you girls out there, look at Moana Jones. Why is she wearing a helmet? Because she's smart and because she wants her brains to stay where they belong, and because she charges hard. So if you want to, but on the flip side of things, I see a lot of these people, like these kids and stuff, and they're just like, these parents are buying them a helmet and thinking, now go charge. Like the helmet's not going to save you from dying, or the helmet's not going to give you the ability to charge Pipeline. You need that ability and the helmet.
Yeah, there's other ways to die out there, as B. Durbidge showed, shattering his pelvis during the Pipe Masters. There's a lot of ways you can get absolutely destroyed at that joint. Speaking of Moana Jones Wong, I understand you've had plenty to do with her over the years. Talk to us about her approach to pipe, in particular that wave after the backdoor shootout. I imagine, were you on the beach for that? Like, how have you watched her surfing develop, and what was your take on what are your memories of that wave in particular?
Well, so Moana Jones' father, for people who don't know, he's a Jamie Mitchell of Hawaii paddleboarding. Jamie Mitchell was 10-time world champ paddleboarder, I believe. Well, Dawson Jones, Moana's father, is the Hawaiian version of that. He's Howley like myself, but he was a world-class paddleboarder. Real nice, genuine guy. Little older than me, grew up with him. So I started actually sponsoring Moana Jones when she was about 12, as I've sponsored, my family, my wife. My wife sponsored Coco Ho and Sage Erickson when they were 8, when they were 5, made bikinis for them. I was sponsoring Baron Mamiya, sponsoring so many different people. Bruce and Andy staying with me, this and that. But that'll take 10 hours to go over all that stuff. But I watched Moana growing up. I don't think a lot of people know, but Moana was pretty close to being a national champion than amateur. She traveled to the mainland a lot. She was in the NSSA national championships, in all of our amateur championships. her family has their religion that they, I forget exactly what it's called. Sorry for my being not too intelligent, but the long story short is she would go to this 5-day event that starts on Monday and ends on Sunday. The national championships year after year, and she would get to her Saturday semifinal or quarterfinal, I believe, and she wouldn't show up because she wasn't allowed to surf on Saturdays. So she would have probably been national champion many times. She was that good in little waves. She was sponsored by Billabong. And then she I think, just shined all that competition stuff at about 16, 17, 18. She's over it. And then she disappeared out of the limelight, didn't have any sponsors. I spoke to her the other day. She's like, yeah, you know what I did? I went and surfed like gas chambers, and I went and surfed like out of the way waves, and I learned to charge. Moana Jones, I think, and all female surfers need to understand, Moana didn't just paddle out at Pipeline and start trying to get waves at Pipeline. She actually honed her skills riding other waves and really going for it hard at Rocky Point, at gas chambers, Velzeland, some of the other reef breaks. By the time she paddled out to Pipeline at, let's say, 16, 18, 19, whatever that was, she had already technically became a very good tube rider, a very confident surfer in waves of consequence. And then she transitioned, then she paddled out to Pipeline and started to earn her stripes. So in this day and age, we see a lot of girls that are going out to Pipeline with their helmet on and trying to get waves out there. And so 99.9%, they're not going to really catch waves because of the crowds out there. So I'd like to say, like, I kudos to Aaron Brooks, to Sierra Kerr, to these girls that travel to No Can Do's and Nias and Chopo, and kudos to I can't wait to see Vahine Fierro, charging Pipeline. I love to see these girls that actually hone their skills at other locations and then paddle out to Pipeline with a helmet on and then go for it, put your head down and go. And that kind of goes into the world where we are today with surfing and Pipeline. Last year, I enjoyed watching the Pipe Pro more, the final. There was John and Barron. That way Barron got to win. The thing was awesome. But I actually take nothing away from those two. I've watched them my whole life. I've known them both since they were like 5 years old. But I enjoyed watching Molly Picklum and Katie Simmers and Betty Lou Sakura, and who was the fourth one that was in the semi? One more that was charging absolutely hard. How can
Betty
I not be
Lou,
remembering?
Molly, Katie. Oh, it's gonna kill me. Well, they're the standouts anyway from that day. I was there on the beach as well, and mate, it was. I got to say, when I rocked up a little bit later, I missed Molly's 10, but I remember just looking at the energy. I was fresh off the plane from Oz and walked along the beach and just thought, as soon as I saw the first blue nugget blow its guts out, I thought, wow, this is actually beyond where women's surfing is at right now. And I was a little bit scared for them. And then to see the clinic they put on, that was as close to a quantum leap in high performance surfing as there's ever been, I reckon. It felt like the bar got raised significantly that day, whereas it tends to be more incremental in nature, the shifts in performance. But that was a fucking clinic, especially when it went a bit onshore too, and Molly and Katie was still knifing it at big, angry kind of chandelier backdoor. The one Betty Lou got, I thought she got robbed blind on the buzzer. She got I think they come in at a 7 or whatever it was. But I felt like that was a 9 all day. Kind of like skidded a little bit on the knife, fully under it. Mate, it was really just an incredible thing to behold. I had a chat with Darren Hanley about this too, about that day, that like the footage didn't do it justice. He was on the beach and then they'd run up to the Rip Curl house to watch the replays on the telly, and he was just going, mate, it's night and day. Like it just flattens it out. It's shot from a bit higher on the broadcast from water level on the beach, and the noise of it and the whole thing combined, it was deadly. It could have killed you for sure.
Yeah, I mean, so for me, like I said, like watching that and watching those girls, I know there's a fourth one we're missing. I don't see how we could not think the fourth one. There was one more girl who's kind of charging super hard. But then you have, so you basically have those girls, and then you've got, obviously the Queen of Pipeline, Moana Jones. She'll be the first to tell you. I was speaking to her the other day. She's not the master out there. She's the queen, and nobody really ever masters Pipeline. Yes, she's a Pipeline master. She's a champion, but everyone's still trying to learn how to ride the wave. I think she's got a lot more in her. She's going to get bigger and better and heavier waves for sure. I think with Aaron Brooks, who hasn't caught a wave over 6 foot at Pipeline, let's be real, maybe even 5 foot yet, but she's gotten some at Chopo, and what she's done in other places, I think she's equipped right now. If she just gets the right board and has the right coach maybe, or knows how to line up out there. That's the other thing, when all these girls are out there, they don't really know the lineup and they don't have a coach out there, and it's good. It's not that easy. I've seen a lot of the Tatis and Caroline Marks, who I think have the ability to surf Pipeline really good, but they're riding the wrong boards and trying to take off in the wrong place, and I'll coach you if you want. No.
But mate, that's a very generous offer.
Now, yeah. So right now, to be completely frank, there's maybe 8 girls on the planet that have the ability right now to ride Pipeline and compete with a Moana Jones or a Molly Picklum or a Katie Simmers. And I can't wait until there's 20 of them. But what happens is they've ran the girls, and sometimes, how they'll run the girls in the lesser conditions, and then Moana Jones will lose. Moana Jones should have been in that semifinal and that final with those girls. That was the only thing missing. She had lost when it was 2 to 3 feet the prior day to somebody who wanted nothing to do with that. But I'm totally for girls surfing. I want the best for them, equal opportunity. Just like with the Eddy, we have 10 girls in the Eddy this year. But Pipeline is, if you're going to be in an event at Pipeline, guy or girl, I think you need to be ready to put your head down on a 10-foot wave on the ledge and paddle and go. End of story. And I think those girls proved they're ready last year, and we have the evolution and the growth of women surfing in real waves of consequence like Pipeline is, like you said, it didn't double, it went 10 times what it was just that one day. And hopefully these other girls understand the importance of traveling around the world and riding real waves and honing your skills at other places rather than Pipeline.
It's such a good point. I mean, in Australia, we have so many hollow technical slabs here that can, in some ways, prepare you for Pipeline. I mean, look, yeah, backdoor and pipe, its ability to hold its shape at that size that it can hold is so unique, and there isn't really that much of a comparison with any other wave I can think of. But that said, just being able to get the technique right, to be able to knife under the lip, backside and front side, and get blown out of pits, that is something you can definitely work on in the lead up to at least get you comfortable, because there's just no point paddling out, like you said. If you don't have the runs on the board at hollow waves around the world, there's literally no point. It's just a token gesture at best. But mate, I want to get into your relationship with that wave, because you're an absolute Pipeline icon, and you really hit your straps through the 90s. And as you mentioned, you had a very specific strategy in mind, sitting on that Wakita bowl, which, you know, at that point is probably the Liam bowl or some other name. And it's cosmic because you've raised Iala. He gets a wave from that exact spot. And so let's talk about what activates that spot. What I understand, it's big west swells. It's kind of 1.5 reef in between second and first. You're looking for ones where there's a bit of a chip shot, so you just get an entry and get up ahead of steam for the inside bowl. But mate, talk to us about some of your most memorable waves and sessions out there. You had a wave out there in 95 that still stands up today as one of the greatest waves ever ridden at Pipeline. It is like, it looks a lot like Chopes actually, but obviously has the imperfection of pipe. Talk to us a bit about what kind of conditions you were looking for, the boards, your whole approach to surfing that wave safely and getting the waves that you did, because they were fucking mind melting. To this day, they stand up, man.
Thank you very much. Yeah. Lots of days, lots of moments. Blessed to surf pipe in the late 80s and early 90s, 90, 91, 92, from 90 to 95. More real swells at Pipeline. You know, it's sad, but it's true. And I'll tell you straight, in my opinion, I won't tell you straight. I'll give you my honest opinion, is that I remember winners in 90, 91, 92, 93, 94, 95, where in one winter we had the amount of waves that I've seen in the last 5 winners. In one day, we had as many waves, amazing, iconic waves ridden in 1 week that you see in a whole winter. Pipeline doesn't seem to come together like it used to for the real, like iconic type of waves. I had about a 10-year, I surfed Pipeline 25 years. I had a 10-year to me, I kind of had a pretty strong, I'm not going to say I was the man and a stronghold on Pipeline, but I think for about 10 years there, I might have caught more waves than anybody else, like more real waves. Part of it because I live right here, I was on it. Me and Wakita would be down there in the dark every single day pipe broke. I show up in the dark half an hour before sunrise. And if it was good, I was on it. And I would not leave the beach until the sun set. So I had a session where I did 9.5 hours. I went out at 9 and came in at 6:30. My average sessions were 5 hours. I looked at guys who go out for an hour or 2 or 3, and I kind of was like, and then you come in, and then you eat lunch, and you go switch boards, and then the wave of the day comes in. To me, Pipeline it was also about being ready on those perfect days. And so I got to be a part of some of the era when photography was at a high. There was no Instagram and all that crap. When magazines, you waited months, and if you got, listen to Surfer Magazine, Surfing World, Surfing Life, the top 10 mags in the world. Let's just say even top 5 between Australia and America. I mean, look, a magazine has 12 cover shots, and it has 12 center spreads. If you're going to get a center spread, you did something right. If you're going to get a cover shot, you really crushed it, especially if you didn't have Quicksilver or Billabong on the nose of your board. I was blessed to get a lot of iconic waves that I'm very happy with, and multiple cover shots and whatnot, and made money, through surfing. Aki and Slater were in the finals. I believe it was 90. It was 97, not 97, not 95. Aki and Slater were in. I might even be wrong. Sometimes I get dates wrong, but I know for a fact Aki and Slater were man on man in the final. Slater won. It was 8 foot. That swell was still in the water, and then there was a 13-foot, 20-second swell coming in. I called the buoys. It was 13:20. When you hear 13:20, that's going to be Waimea. It's going to be 15, 18, 20 feet. It's going to close out. So you got to get on it early. I went down to the beach. I was down on the water's edge in the dark with my buddy Wakita and another friend of mine, Aaron Fredette. we were looking at the waves, and there was the 8-foot swell from the day before, and there was a new 10 to 12-foot swell on top of it. And when swells are rising, those 13-second interval swells, it gets very ledgy and very doubled up and very sketchy. And I remember just looking out going, what the hell are we thinking paddling out right now? And me and Wakita just looked at each other and we're like, whatever, let's go. Paddled out, and like there was Ted Grambo out there trying to shoot photos. And one other guy, Jack English. There was 2 people in the water. It started to wash out. Big 15-footers washing through the channel. Ted Grambo got washed to the beach. This guy, Jack English, it's a crazy story. This is as crazy as my wave, and maybe crazier, is that this guy had a Nikonus. It's a camera that you can only shoot 1 shot at a time. And this wave came, and it was right at that area where we're talking about. It was the deep area. It was just outside. The thing is there was a little bit of a chip in on it, but technically it was not a chip in. Let me get to my feet, and there was a gnarly double up. So it became 2 in 1. And 99 out of 100 waves, when you take off at Pipeline, if you're on the top part of the wave and then there's a full double up and you try to go over, we've seen guys just take horrendous wipeouts because they didn't kick out. They tried to get over that ledge. Well, it all kind of came together, and it let me down the second step. And then the whole wave just turned into 1. And I didn't realize what the wave was doing. I just rode it out. I didn't really get barreled. I just got right in the pocket of it, and then rode the wave out. And then Kelly actually, true to Kelly, he was out there with us right after he won his 4th Pipe Master or whatever it was. And he's like, oh, I think that's the heaviest wave I've ever seen. And I was like, wow, thank you so much. That's rad. I didn't know it was behind me. 3 days later, I was sitting at the access between the Volcom houses there, between Jerry Lopez. I was sitting in my truck. And this Jack English comes walking up. He's like this puppy dog, like just lost kid, like 19-year-old kid from Encinitas, California, has no idea, that didn't know nothing about how to shoot photos at Pipeline. And he walked up and he pulled out this Polaroid, this slide, but it was one of the bigger slides, like 4-inch by 4-inch. They had bigger slides. And he pulled it out and he's like, can I show you this? And then I looked at it and I was like, oh my God. And just so happened Don King was right there, who's the legend of photography. And Don King walked over and said, let me see that. And then he looked at it and he goes, that's the best photo I've seen in my life at Pipeline.
Wow.
So that's kind of my claim to fame. Or one of my most memorable waves and memorable moments. That and yeah, so I have a leash on. You can see there's a leash on. That helps me. That was 96. That was 96. 98 is when we all were at Chopo, when Kobe Albertin and Conan, that year I was there for that swell. That was a iconic moment. I almost won that contest. I was only one of the only guys with a big board. But the thing is, there hadn't been a wave ridden at Chopo over 6 feet, 5 feet documented in media. So that's how I can prove that it's not Chopo and that I actually paddled into that wave.
Mate, that's such a wild story. So we're essentially talking about, what was it? 13 feet, 20, like a combo swell, 13 feet, 20 seconds mixed in with an 8-foot pipe swell. And
an 8-foot, like an 8-foot 14 from the day before.
Wow.
The Pipe Masters was done in perfect 6 foot. And then you had that combo.
See, this is the thing about pipe that people who may not have been there, they won't realize this, that it is so much, it reminds me of like Stratty on reef, where you have multiple swells in the water refracting off all these outside bombies. They hit each other. It creates mutant double and triple ups, and waves of the kind you're talking about. I think we've all seen those waves. You know, Iala had one like that, an infamous wipeout. I think it was earlier this year, where he ends up oh, frick, man, just flying off the ledge like an astronaut. I've seen Miguel Tudela pin drop out of a wave like that, where you kind of getting this little chip, but then it hits the other swell that's in the water or another lump and just goes mutant. But that's a wave that was successfully ridden. Mate, it's a miraculous photo and one of the great moments in the history of the wave. And in terms of like when you're sitting out there, talk us through what the lineup looks like on a day like that. So, and these are the days that I understand you really looked for, where you've got it capping on those outer reefs, and you're looking for waves that, it must be so intimidating to hold your ground, and you're seeing fucking huge lines swinging around log cabins, coming down the coast at you from that west angle, and pipe at this size. It's almost a bit like a muted point break in a way. Like it runs so fast and cannons down the line. Like, what is break down the dynamics of like a dream day at Pipeline, the swell, the direction, what it looks like from out there?
Yeah, I mean, I love this question, and I think it's a very under-asked and under-explained part of Pipeline. Yeah, like Pipeline, everybody wants to see that ledging 8 to 10 foot wave on the reef and guys free falling in and eating shit and getting spit out. But I came from the era where, like I said, back in the 80s and 90s, we had so many of these days that it was 15 to 18 foot. So let's start by like basically when the swell is in that 300 to 303, it's like when it's under 310 degrees, 305, 300, like a pure wet, let's just say 300 degree pure, pretty much west northwest swell, which is very rare these days. The swell the other day was like 315, 320 coming too straight in. When you have a swell that is in that 300 degree angle, it can be a 15 to 20 foot swell where guys are surfing Waimea. Then you can be surfing Pipeline. On those days, Pipeline is 15 to 18 feet. I've never seen anybody ride a 20-foot wave at Pipeline, a 40-foot wave. Let's be clear on that. I'm pretty darn sure nobody's ever ridden a 20-foot Hawaiian 40-foot face wave at Pipeline. I can tell you I've seen a lot of waves around 36 feet, 35 feet, 18-footers. I've seen guys get barreled, and I've gotten some barrels on 30-plus foot waves way out there. The takeoff zone, I'll lay it down for a lot of guys. I mean, the takeoff zone is right outside of off the wall right away. That's where we sit. There's a couple boils out there. Way out there, there's some boils. Those boils are where you find that wave. That's where you're going to find that 12 to 15 footer right off that boil. The 18 footers are going to break outside of the boil. And you're actually those boils are second reef, true, proper second reef. Anything outside of that boil to me is heading towards third reef. I've seen guys, and you can catch waves between second and third. You can't catch a wave at third reef Pipeline and make it all the way through. So you're lining up at off the wall basically right away, which is a football field away from where everybody's surfing Pipeline. And you can kind of draw a line. You could draw a line from, say, Jerry Lopez's house and just draw a line all the way. If you were to draw a line from off the wall right away, all the way out to the boil, and you draw a line from Jerry Lopez's house to that boil, that is the line of where you catch the waves at, all along that line. That's like 50-yard line. When it's 12 feet, so in between that outer reef boil and first reef, you have what we call kind of in between reefs. And that's kind of more down like there's different takeoffs, like Connor Coffin has a house. You kind of split the difference between off the wall and the Lopez house. All these houses are different lineup spots for me. Jamie O'Brien's dad used to have the Red Bull house over there, Jamie's house. Right in that area is where that's kind of basically what Wakita Peak is. Anything that area in deeper. But yeah, really, you're the guy. I could probably say 9 out of 10 of the best pipe surfers right now. 9 out of 10, maybe let's say 15 out of 20 of the best pipe surfers who are surfing Pipeline today. They haven't even ridden a wave that I consider Pipeline. That's the true Pipeline to me, is that wave that you get outside of off the wall lefts, and you get out of off the wall, out by those boils, and you ride that wave all the way through, and you hold the line, and you draw the line, and you do a little stall or whatever you got to do to make sure you get barreled. And those waves can end up being 15-foot barrels on the inside reef, or 12-foot barrels, like the biggest waves that I've seen a lot of my friends catch those waves. You know, there's a guy, Jensen Hassett, there's Cy Smiley, Sean Lopez, there's just but Kalani Chapman and Tamayo Perry and Randall Paulson. Like, look up these guys' waves that they rode over the years. Check them out. They got some waves that, like, those are true Pipeline waves to me. The Daima dozen 8 to 10 footers on the inside. It's going to have to be a wave like Ayala got for you to remember it. It's going to have to be a wave like Keito Matsuoka got. Have to be, you know, a wave like Sean Briley got, that's on that first reef.
Or Mackay McNamara, for that matter.
Yeah. So with Mackay, Landon, and now Ayala, I can pretty much say that I've been gratified, or I don't know how to say it. I've been blessed that all my kids and my adopted son have all gotten that wave that I like to see them ride. And that's that wave from either deep back in there or way out the back. Mackay still hasn't gotten one from way out there. Landon's gotten numerous ones where he's gotten them from the outer reef and rode them through and rode it right. Ayala and Mackay still in search of that outer reef one. But you need like an 8-foot board. Jamie O'Brien. So you look at Kalani Chapman, he's changed it up last 5 years. He's in search of that wave, and only that wave mainly. You see Jamie the other day, he went out there and rode that one with Mike Stewart. Those are that wave that Jamie O'Brien rode with Mike Stewart. That's Pipeline. You could have two guys riding the wave and both of you make it. So it takes years, it takes decades, it takes your whole life to maybe find that wave. And you might never get it. Sorry, but back in the 80s and 90s, there was a lot of us getting those waves, and a lot of those waves were ridden with style and grace, and with the legendary iconic Pipeline ride.
Yeah. I can see why you say that, because they are pure Pipeline waves. Because on a day like that, there is no backdoor, there is no off the wall. It's only pipe. It's second reef pipe, and it is like, yeah, it's completely shifted the approach. Now it's all about first reef pipe. I mean, and it's an insane art form, and they're basically surfing it like a bodyboarder in a lot of ways, completely under it, air dropping, elevator dropping. The one Mackay got, the 10 in the pipe event a while ago, that's about as good as you can do it on that first reef. I think the Keito Matsuoka one is the only one I can think of really in this modern age that stands up to that wave, where it's like, it's so steep and deep that you're a millimeter away from pin dropping out of a legitimate 10 to 15 foot first reef pipe wave. But in both cases, they held their nerve and managed to knife into, just like, it trips me out to have the gumption to hold your nerve under the ledge when it stands up that tall. Pipe is so amazing in its ability to jack at the last second and double in size on that first reef. Oh my Lord. I have the utmost respect for the courage and technique of guys like Mackay, Keito, JOB, John. It's an endless list really of those first reef exponents these days. But the pipe days you're talking about.
Yeah, you look at somebody like Cam Richards. You saw a couple of the waves that kid's ridden. You look at what's his name? Anthony Walsh.
Anthony Walsh
ain't stupid. Anthony Walsh ain't stupid. He knows where to get the wave, and he knows where we've gotten our waves, and he goes back there, and he's not going to get the wave right in the pack unless it's uncrowded. He's going to get that wave a little deeper. And so there's a few surfers that I've seen, and I've just sometimes I shake my head and go, "Damn, that guy's smart." He knew where it was. He got it. Nobody could ride it. Nobody's going to blatantly burn him because he's coming in steep and deep from way behind, and very rare. But yeah, that's what I like to see. I got all respect for the guys on the ledge. There's no way I never rode the ledge, really. I rode the ledge only when I was in heats because I had to. I always will find that chip in because I get up slow. I'm a kook. I've always been a kook. I was teased because I stand up too slow, and that I was told I would never ride Pipeline because I get up too slow. Well, getting up slow made me get deeper. and yeah, it's
taking off deep there. Like, the crazy thing about it is that there's no real guarantee what's going to unfold along that first reef part of the wave. Like, I mean, I guess when you get to your level and Wakita's level, you guys can predict to a pretty close degree the outcome once it hits that first reef. But, you know, there's a lot of uncertainty there. It's a huge amount of water. You got combo swells in the water with you. And so a lot of the time you see it when you sit on the beach there on those days, people roll in and then just fucking have to straighten out and try and outrun this thing before it absolutely hits them in the back of the head and kills them. Like it must have been so wild to sit that far out off the back of off the wall and just be looking in at first reef pipe at these huge 10 to 15 plus foot things cannoning across lava and blowing their guts out or closing out and just knowing that, like, holy shit, like, I'm going to have to commit to one of these things at some point.
Yeah, I like that analogy. It's like basically you are, in a battle. You are told by your sergeant officer that's time for you to go. We're out there holding the line, and then they're like, okay, charge. And so you're sitting out there looking at cannons across the valley, and soldiers coming at you trying to kill you, and people everywhere, kind of like a scattered lineup. And yeah, it's funny because back in the day, once again, like I would say 50% of the way. Here's a really good a theory and a thought is back in the day, about 50. If you got into that perfect wave out the back there in the 90s and whatnot, 50% of those waves would just make it right. You had a 50-50 chance to me. They were going right through perfect. This day and age, maybe 10% of them do it. And like, yeah, Jamie O'Brien got one. That was the only wave I think I don't know if there's been more than one wave this year ridden from the outer reef that somebody got barreled and came out of. We're not going to, that's a good thing to look into. Watch this whole winter and tell me how many waves you see ridden from outside that are ridden through and people make them. I would say there'll probably be 10 if we're lucky. Well, I'd never got 10 on one day, but I've gotten 5 and I've gotten 10 on one swell. And I've seen 50 of them come in on one day. So it's very rare to get that wave. And that's where it's kind of growing up in the era I grew up. We got to see so much stuff that people aren't aware of. And so the pipeline surfer of today doesn't, I guess, understand or comprehend the pipeline of the past because it rarely happens. These waves like Jamie caught the other day, those outer reef iconic waves are so rare that nobody's going to commit their whole time and session and day to go find that wave. They're going to sit inside and battle the white waters and duck dive to get the 10-foot ledge. And that's what they want to do. But some of the best pipe surfers might never even ride one of those waves in their life.
And what do you put that down to? Like, do you have any theories as to why we don't have those days as often anymore. I mean, so many possibilities. Like the whole axis of the Earth can shift half a degree, like over the course of 30 years, and it can, yeah, it can create a flow-on effect where swells are starting and storms are starting from different angles. I don't know. Like I was thinking about this. I've kind of heard you say this in the past, and it made me think about like how much we don't know about these kind of more grand scale environmental shifts. What are your theories as to why we don't have those days anymore?
I just think the one thing I think is the storm flow, the way the tracks of the storms kind of change, which could be just the era we're in or whatnot. It used to seem like we would have a lot more of the storms that come off Japan that are that straight west swell that really comes at us. I think the fetch from the storms is different. Somehow I used to think when it was 310, 15, 320 degree pipeline was going to be all time. Every time I look at this, just like the other day, it was 315 degrees. They're saying, I was telling Landon Mackay, it's going to be on, like it's going to be 15 foot out the back. Perfect. Like real ones. And I don't know, the swells, when they're coming in a lot straighter. And then you have one thing that I could say is the guy who bought the Jerry Lopez house, he put a lot of rocks and stairs and things in along the coast there before any permits were allowed. Nobody said anything. He kind of messed up pipeline for that year and maybe a couple years and maybe even to this day, because if you start hardening that shore right there with all that stuff, it causes a backwash. There's been some,
wow,
you really have to have it all come together for pipeline to be perfect. And you need that 15 to 20 foot straight in swell to pull all the sand off the shore. Then you need that 10 to 15 foot west swell to pull all the sand and fill it into the crevices and cracks and move it down to Eukai, just priming the bottom. And you have to have a prime bottom. What do they call it? What is something? See, the tripemathy. I can't even think of it.
Yeah, bathymetry, is that it?
Yeah, yes, of the bottom, and then the slope of the shore. Take a look at pipeline anytime you go down there and tell me if you see like a 10 degree, 20 degree, 45 degree angle on that shore. That's directly affecting the wave outside. So the angle of the swells seem to have changed a lot as far as what we get. The bottom needs to be really filled properly with sand in the cracks and crevices to make the wave break perfect. And then the shoreline also has to not have too much of a tilt on the shoreline, which is going to cause backwash. So those are key factors in really understanding pipeline.
Wow, so many variables, man. I mean, many waves have this amount of variables, but it's amazing to hear it from, you are as close to a professor of pipeline as ever has existed. That's fascinating insight. And mate, like your career, it goes far beyond pipe. As you mentioned, you were there in 97 and 98 for the Tahiti events. These were the first ever glimpses of consequential chopu, and you were front and center for that whole period, man. Like, what are your memories of those events and your introduction to Tahiti and chopes?
Well, Tahiti was amazing. I went down there in 98. Fatia David was a really good friend of mine. He got us all a good place. It was called Bonjoui. It was like a mile, 2 miles, 3 miles past the end of the road. It was a beautiful place past the end of the road. We had to take a boat. It was crazy. I mean, we had Bruce and Andy and Corey and Nathan Fletcher and Poncho and just plenty guy. We had like 20 of us staying at this place, and we were riding this big ass canoe that could fit 20 people in it. And everybody had to be ready. Everybody had to jump on. We'd go down, we'd surf. This was the year of 98. Andy had won it the year before, and it was 3-4 feet, and they ran it at Big Pass and whatnot. This year was the first year, the first few days, 4 to 6 feet, a couple 7-footers, everybody just psyching. Everybody's having their 6.2s and 6.4s, and Maybe one guy had a 6'6", and then the swell got just crazy out of bounds. It was just really, really big. And Kobe Alberton was charging very hard. I remember just like looking at the kid, and he was frothing, and a lot of respect for him and the surfing he was doing. There's a lot of drama went on in the water, out of the water at the awards. The waves got so big on the final day and got onshore that they had to cancel it and run it the next day. Finish the finals. It was 2 days of like 10 to 15 foot chopo. Crazy. I had brought in my 7.6 Jerry Lopez board with me. I brought an 8.2 that I rode Pipeline for 10 years on. I thought I was going to just chip in with my 8.2. Little did I know, I tried to ride one wave on the 8.2. I put that thing away. My 7.6 was a magic carpet board, an amazing board. There was one other guy named Mark Moreno. He brought like a 7.0, like Timmy Patterson or something. He let Kobe Alberton borrow. I mean, he let Conan use his board. It's like a 6'10", I believe, maybe. Poncho brought a 7.2. This guy had a 6'10". I had a 7.6. No one had a board over 6'6". And Kobe was probably on like a 6'4", and he was just super gnarly, and he's head down going. And it was just crazy. The day I was in the quarters with Poncho, and I came back with a couple 10s, and I kicked out of the wave celebrating, and this 12-footer was on my head on the west bow, and I had just enough time to pull my leash off. My 7.6 and me went into the lagoon. I grabbed onto a rock over inside of there, one of the rocks, and stood on a rock while I waited for Raymana on his putt-putt jet ski. It was a red jet ski, and the thing was, not even a two-seater. And the most putt-putt ski, we had one ski and Raymana, and he took about 10 minutes to come get me because it was chaos. He came and got me. I won the heat. Got back out into the lineup. We looked for my board. My board was gone. Went to Poncho and asked Poncho to borrow his board because we were staying together. I beat Poncho. He was nice enough. He let me borrow his board. One and only time I ever rode a Bushman, first and last. He had a 7.2. First wave of the heat, I went to paddling. I got stuck on the lip, ate shit. That board's gone. I ended up losing in the semifinals. But that event, like, I had my filmer there, and I have footage of that whole, like in my old videos, I have footage of that whole moment and that whole swell and just the whole thing. Is that was kind of like the mother of all days at Chopo. The next year they turned it into a CT. They took it from us all, and it's never been the same. We've never got to see the Kobe Albertons and Conan Hayeses and all the Johnny Boys and everybody charging Chopo and again, because they took it and they shut it down, and that's sad. But yeah, we were part of that. It was amazing.
It's up there with the most pivotal chapters in the history of surfing. It's the beginning of what becomes like, the home.
Next pipeline. The next pipeline.
Exactly. And it's found, it's discovered, it's given airtime, and rightfully so. It's given to the underground to test their wares in that first event. And Kobe, mate, what an iconic surfer and talent he was, from, again, like a really hard graft upbringing, kind of, raised by his grandma. His parents are off the scene. He's getting raised on like Voodoo, Shark Island, these kind of super technical heavy slabs. Voodoo's like a pretty perfect introduction or training ground for a wave like Chopes. It's you got to be under it. It's perfect if you stay on the boil and get in, but it's very intimidating, holds a lot of Hawaiian style energy. And then, of course, famously, Kobe gets misquoted or quoted in a magazine saying something along the lines of Johnny Boy was sitting wide or too wide, or certain characters were sitting too wide at Chopes. And it becomes a bit of a storm in a teacup where, yeah, they end up Johnny takes exception to the quote, and that quote haunts Kobe to the point they end up having to punch on in a toilet block in Haleiwa. Wow, what an iconic chapter.
All right. I don't know what's going on, but it's
Mate,
it is what it is.
just a couple of wax heads trying to weave our way through the technological world, mate. It's always been a hassle,
Yeah.
and it will continue to be a hassle. We're not cut out for this shit, Liam.
Yeah, well, at least it's free.
That's
We're
right.
not spending money. Like they're not charging us by the minute.
No, they're not charging us by the minute. They're just sucking up our time and energy and causing
Yep.
carcinogenic levels of stress. But apart from that, it's free.
Awesome.
Mate, so good to have you back for part two. And I understand, I mean, the reason you had to leave to begin with was because you had some responsibilities with the Eddie opening ceremony. I understand you have a pretty senior role in that event. What exactly is your role? And yeah, talk us through the opening ceremony. It looked amazing.
Yeah. So yeah, I am the official contest director, which is pretty extreme role to have. Basically making the call on whether the event's gonna run. We watch swells, and I talk to forecasters, and about the way it works out is that we're in a red pattern right now. Red means we're not going nothing. When we see a swell, we can we go yellow, which is technically 7 to 10 days out. We'll go yellow if we see something we're interested in. And then at the 3-day mark, 72 hours is when we either go back to red, back to yellow, or back to green, or go to green. So all hands on deck. It's a pretty big production to get everything to the beach and ready to rock and roll in 72 hours. Lots of moving parts. But basically, I have a big team behind me, Rip Curl, which is amazing. Rip Curl's sponsoring the event this year, and really helps a lot on my having that support, so that I know that when I make the call, I have people that have my back.
Magic, man. And what an honor to be the contest director of the Eddie. What was that like, getting that appointment? And I'm assuming you've got a fair bit of history with the iCow family. Clyde and Eddie would have been the generation just above you when you were coming up. How does it feel to be occupying one of the most prestigious and important roles in all of core underground surfing?
Yeah, I mean, so Clyde iCow's son, his name is iCow. He's part of the circle of my kids, the Monizes, the Ayala Stewarts. I actually grew up in the Waikiki, Queens Beach with the Ayalas and Monizes and everybody there. He became a part of the gang, so to say, of the teenage kids when they would surf out here on the North Shore. He would hang out at my house a lot, spend the night. So I got really close with Ha'a, and I've always been like friends with Clyde. When Quicksilver did leave in 2016, Clyde reached out to me like 2017, 18, and asked me if I wanted to be the assistant director, be an advisor, be a part of the event. And so, yeah, the event, when Luke Shepardson won 2 years ago, I was the director. Me and Clyde kind of shared the role, co-directors. But this year, it's kind of like I'm the official director, having all the weight on my shoulders. But yeah, I was the contest director of as the Menehune Surf Contest in Haleiwa. It's our amazing kids contest. I was the contest director of the Haleiwa International Open. It's an event at Ali'i Beach that Joel Centeo and those guys run now. And then I ran 6 junior pros at Sunset Beach and Pipeline, 2012, 13, 14. So I do have a lot of history and knowledge on running events. And kind of my name would be the facilitator, because I can facilitate things, and also the mediator, because I had to mediate a lot of things in my life through my career. And so now taken the knowledge and the history of my involvement in surfing, and pretty much at the highest level here with Eddie.
Yeah, and let's talk about some of your highlights from across the generations of the Eddie. I mean, far out, man. You must have seen some shit go down in that event. Yeah. What are the real standout swells or memories, performances, that stuff like that?
Well, in the beginning, like in the let's see, in the late '80s, early '90s, for example, 1984, Denton Miyamura won the first ever, and it was at Sunset Beach. Denton Miyamura was a surfer that I looked up to, a very good surfer. And that was the first event, and they had that at Sunset Beach. They moved it down to Waimea, and the first year, I believe they ran at Waimea right around the '90s or late '80s. I got to see guys like Roger Erickson, Al Chapman, Mark Fu, like these just rugged big wave riders that weren't really sponsored and didn't really care whether you knew their name or not. They were just these hellmen of big wave riding. And obviously, you know, Marvin Foster, and then Brock Little and Aaron Napoleon, two youngsters, two young guns. Those were two of the youngest guys to ever be invited to the Eddie. But being able to go down there and see just all these guys from that era, it was definitely a thing I enjoyed watching. And then over the years, like my brother Garrett was in the event a few times. He did pretty well. But yeah, the Mark Foos and the Brock Littles and Roger Erickson and Tony Moniz. Like I remember watching Tony Moniz and Mark Fu and them backdoor these 25 footers and pull into huge closeouts, and yeah, just the who's who of big wave riding, the core guys. You know, some of them were pros, some of them weren't really pros. Like they didn't have no contracts, they didn't have no clothing sponsors. They're just hellmen of the big wave arena, and no flotation vests, you know. No jet skis. This is pre all that. No social media. It was just you went down there and just watched these guys risk their lives and take on the heaviest wave on the planet. And you know, back then there was no Jaws. There was no Mavericks. Mavericks was early '90s, technically mid '90s. There was no Nazare. There was a few waves. All roads led to Waimea Bay and the North Shore.
And what in your mind is the ultimate wave at Waimea? Like, you know, in terms of getting like maxing out the scoring scale there, what would you be looking for?
So the other year when we ran the event, it was massive. But the swell there was a lot of west in the swell. When the swell is west, it kind of is like similar to, in a way you could say, like Jaws or like a VLAN or like a just a wedgy kind of compact big nugget of a wave. And the takeoff area is not that broad. It's a kind of a more compact takeoff area. So speaking to like Aaron Gold, who's a good friend of mine, one of the main guys out there who knows the wave very well, he and a couple others enlightened me that the actual direction of the swell that we ran the event in wasn't the prime direction. You want to have, there's years I remember when it's more of a northwest or kind of a straight northwest. Once it's more west northwest, you need it to be more north than west. So yeah, the northwest is the best. The reason being is because the wave will come from by Foodland, Three Tables. It'll come outside log cabins and you'll see it freight training. You'll see these lines in the horizon, these big black lines, and there'll be 3, 4, 5 of them making their way down the point. And it gives you kind of a little bit of heads up that it's about to go down. It's about to happen. You can see it. And so there's a guy named Chris Owens, Bobby Owens, his brother. And there's other surfers that they like to take off a little deeper behind the boil and more towards Sunset Beach, part of the lineup, the deeper area. And you can get these chip-ins on these 25 footers, 30 footers, like 25 foot back, like 50 foot faces. You can get this chip in from the north. And then if it's west in as well, then you're going to backdoor the whole thing. And that's where like Tony Moniz and Mark Fu and other guys have gotten these waves where they pulled into the barrel. Very rare that anybody's made a barrel out there, but to get that 25-foot wave from way back, and it's like Sunset Beach, same thing, just a bigger version. When Sunset's north-northwest, you take off out the back on the north peak, and then you're flying through to the middle of the wave, and then you get this big west peak that you can backdoor. Sunset these days isn't really surfed the way the old days used to be surfed. Everybody sits on the inside bowl and kind of rides the end of the wave. Unfortunately, nobody rides big enough boards out there. And so when the swell is more north, 25-foot, 50-foot faces out of the north-northwest, it really opens the playing field up, because you have the main takeoff area, and then you have a deeper takeoff area, and then you kind of have an outside takeoff area and the shoulder. So we're hoping for a swell out of the north-northwest. Furthermore, like if the swell's really west, the island of Kauai blocks the swell. So we need to always watch the angles and the directions to really verify it's the swell we want.
And so this takeoff spot you're talking about, is this what Flea was attempting to do when he ended up getting kind of lip launched and pin dropping out of that huge, super cupped out hollow one?
That's kind of right in the vortex of the whole thing. That's the same spot where everybody was riding this last swell. That's more of like right in that center of the peak of the wave, maybe a little bit back. But yeah, it's if you look back through the history and look at some waves, I mean, I think there's a wave of Chris Owens like 5 years ago that he got. It's only maybe an 18-footer, maybe a 20-footer, but he came from way behind it and kind of drew this proper line. And back in the days, like, unfortunately, you can't really Google Mark Fu and you're going to see a video of what he did, or Tony Moniz. But there are images out there if you search, and there's probably some video somewhere out there that will show you, what it's like to take off deeper, back deep, like where these guys used to take off at.
Yeah, I can definitely remember Kelly talking about watching, was it Clark Little or Brock Little kind of find that line in, and that has become the line. And I think Kelly eventually found a hollow one out there himself. Maybe he's found more than one. I've seen John find that line and get barreled out there, John Florence. So yeah, I am aware of what you're talking about, and what a feat it is, man. Holy shit. To manage to backdoor and knife a wave of that size. It stands up so tall on the ledge. It's such an intimidating, heavy water wave, Waimea. It's such a spectacle. And I guess now that we've got drone footage and all this technology, we're seeing it from all these various perspectives that really highlight how much ocean is in this thing.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at Jaws and you look at a lot of the waves that were ridden at Jaws where guys are getting barreled, and you look at kind of the way they ride Jaws, it's very similar in a way. They're kind of up the point, kind of deep, kind of rolling in, not really, kind of trying to find that chip in outside of the ledge. Albie Layer's sitting right there on the bowl, and he's just trying to get barreled. Whereas some of these other guys, they're coming from way back, and they're drawing this line and backdooring that whole inside section at Jaws. So very similar kind of theory and very similar kind of ride is that ultimate Waimea ride. Now, Waimea, the barrel doesn't open up like Jaws does. So to complete that barrel out at Waimea is very difficult. But to get that wave and draw that line and get into the barrel is kind of the ultimate ride, whether you make it or not. And to me, that's like a 10-point ride. Kelly's went out there and searched for the barrel. But the waves that he's ridden, I think, were a little smaller, like 20-footers, 18-footers. He's looking for that wedgie kind of double up. But Yeah, I think the way the level of surfing is now, and guys, let's say Nathan Florence, and let's say just some of these guys that just are very acclimated to big barrels. I see that if that right swell comes in, it's going to be on.
Far out. That's so sick, man. That's so sick. And you mentioned, in the 90s, Waimea was the premier big wave paddle spot. And then, yeah, Mavericks was kind of just coming on the scene. But since then, we've seen big wave paddle surfing go through an incredible growth period, particularly on the North Shore of Oahu. I mean, what's it been like to watch that unfold? I'm sure you were a part of it at different times. Also, not just paddling, but the tow surf arena. So much experimental, crazy shit going down from the biggest Wednesday swell. I think that was outside log cabins.
Yep.
And even predating that, Buzzy Kerbox, Derek Derner.
Yep.
I mean, these are your vintage, so I'm sure you were a part of some of these wild tow experiments at outside Phantoms, and I like the stories from this period are fucking hilarious. It was cowboy shit. Like, you guys were fucking taking the most insane risks and pushing the sport in such a profound way. Talk us through that period.
Well, one guy that we missed here and that we got to recognize, and he's a character of the sport, was this guy named Ace Cool, Alex Cook, Ace Cool. He's a guy who got dropped off like by a helicopter outside Third Reef Pipeline and kind of got a few waves out there. And then, so he went and tried to find this Third Reef Pipeline. He rode a couple waves out there. He also went down to Kaina Point and tried to ride Kaina Point. And this was like no jet skis, no flotation vest, no nothing. Jump out of a helicopter, maybe a Zodiac. So those were two moments that kind of, he was part of that initial, quest for riding the outer reefs. You have a lot of different outer reefs. Phantoms is like outside Velzyland. I have some videos in some of my videos where Tom Carroll's out there with Titus Kinimaka, my brother, Troy Alotis, the photographer Hank with his jet ski. There's a couple of days in the early days that Phantoms was kind of the spot where guys were honing their towing skills on the North Shore. These guys were riding 7-foot tow boards. I'll get you some of the footage. You can probably look through it, and it's some classic stuff. And then we had log cabins that year in 98. And then you also have like Himalayas, obviously. That's kind of the spot where Laura Enever got her wave, where a lot of guys have rode. That wave is crazy. It's like a big Tavarua or something, a big G-Land, like just this huge barrel. There's another spot outside outside Alligator Rock. That's where like Mark Healy and some other guys have gotten some crazy waves over there. Then there's another spot down in Kaina Point. It's called Devil's Rock. It's a crazy ass wave. There's guys paddling into 50 footers down there, 60 footers. I mean, there's a guy, his name was Dusty, and he's from Florida, and 6 months out of the year, the guy's alligator hunter. He like comes to your house and gets the alligators out of your yard and wrestles with alligators. And then he was riding some of the biggest, heaviest waves. Like, let's say back when Taylor Knox won, XXL wave back at Todos that year. I swear this guy Dusty rode bigger waves than anyone could imagine by himself out the back at this crazy ass wave down that Kaina Point. I'm kind of letting the bag out of the hat of a few waves, but there's a lot of them out there, and you gotta know what you're doing. And it's not like 50 Aussies and 50 Brazilians are going to show up and start riding these waves because I'm doing this podcast or anything. But there's Avalanche, there's Puena Point, there's some waves in Kaina Point, there's Himalayas, and Himalayas, there's another wave near Himalayas. There's actually Alligator Rock where Todd Chesser passed away.
Is that right?
Yeah, so that's Alligator Rock, and then there's two waves there's actually two waves in there near Waimea. One where Todd Chesser died, paddling alone out there. There's the other one, that's a right. And then there's a left on the other side where Mark Healy got that crazy big wave. Koa Smith, a couple other guys have gotten some crazy waves out there. Then you head up, you got Waimea, of course, you got log cabins, you know, you've got Outer Reef Pipeline, which that's only been ridden one time by A School. That's not really a wave. And then you got Phantoms. And then, so yeah, there's, you know, a good half dozen actual outer reefs that are legitimate waves on any given big swell, just on the North Shore. And then if you look worldwide, there's too many waves in Oz. I know you can name all those waves that I Kalwami and all these crazy waves in Western Oz and Sydney and all around the slabs and things. And you've got Dungeons in South Africa. You've got a wave like Pico Alto in Peru. That wave's been around a long time. It's a pretty famous wave. And then they got that wave in France, way out the back there. They got waves in Chile, Raymond Navarro's outer reef waves. And now they got them in Brazil. I hear there's a couple waves in Brazil still that we haven't seen that are really big waves. I hear people talking about them. There's those slabby things, but I think there's some really big ones around there. And then obviously Mavericks and Todos. And I mean, there's a place called Shark Park that's in like Central California. My brother surfed before. It's kind of a secret wave in a way, but it's kind of fickle. And then look, you've got Cortez Bank. I mean, there are so many big waves up in Oregon. You've got Oregon has a big wave up there. And there's probably another dozen or even up to 20 plus waves somewhere on the planet that we have yet to see people ride.
Oh, mate, absolutely. And can you give us an insight into what it takes to actually ride these waves and mix it up in that kind of ocean? On the North Shore, it's such a remarkable place. It's a little speck of lava in the middle of the Pacific that just gets obliterated by the wildest long period swells, to the point where, you know, it must feel like you're almost like a ship captain out there on one of these rhino chasers, just paddling way out to sea, navigating bommies, these huge swell lines pouring through. You're so far offshore, and a lot of these guys are doing it alone. It's a really remarkable character type that we have in surfing, and to me, it's really like the purest core of the culture and the sport are these characters like the alligator wrestler from Florida, like a Todd Chesser, a Kirk Björk.
Stop right there. So Kirk is funny at the opening ceremony. We got Russell Björke invited, born in Hawaii. I knew him when he was a little shit grum. We call kids shit grums, a little grummet. And, I knew his wife. I mean, not his wife, his mother, real nice lady, used to surf all the time. I knew his dad, real genuine guy. Dave Wasso, as he was, calling Russell up, he stated the fact that like way back when Dave was first on the North Shore and breaking into big wave riding, he was like, he paddled out to like Himalayas or one of the Misto outer reefs. And there's Kurt Björke out there all by himself. And Kurt looks at Dave and Dave looks at Kurt and Kurt goes, I'm out of here. I'm going in. It's too crowded. And Dave's like, what are you talking about? Stay out with me. And Kurt Björke, like, there's a reason Russell, I think he has the genetics from his dad. And I think his dad kind of instilled a lot of the big wave knowledge that he had. And he's an example of a guy who would paddle out to some crazy outer reefs when there's 30, 40, 50-foot waves and go surf by himself. And the solitude and no bravado, no sponsor, no trying to get a photo, no cameraman, just doing it because that's what he was drawn to do. And so there's been guys like that. And the crazy thing is, like, Jaws became a paddling wave. Outer Reef log cabins, the paddling wave. Eli Olsen caught a huge wave out there. That's what put his name on the map. Himalaya, like just all the different waves that were once just towed, and everybody thought that tow surfing, it's so if you go back to the 80s and 90s, there is some core people that paddled these outer reefs. Guy named Trevor Sifton, he used to surf outer logs paddle. He's an old school charging guy. Kind of every one of these spots I named kind of had a couple people that were just underground and they'd surf these waves alone. Then the tow surfing thing came in, and these guys, went to the whole nother level with towing everything. And then the last 10 years, it's been, now they're all paddling these waves again. And so the level of big wave riding and the amount of waves being ridden on the outer reefs between Kaina Point and Kahuku Point. I mean, there's waves around Turtle Bay and around Kahuku side of the island, some all the way down to Kahana. There's a huge crazy wave there's few big waves on the east side as well. So we have about a dozen outer reef big waves that 6 to 10 of them can all be going off on this at the same time. And the jet skis are out there to help help the guys. Me personally, I've been out on a few of these swells. I don't paddle. I'm on the ski. I'm shuttling people around and driving the filmers, or like a good friend of mine from New Zealand, Guy Mack. I drive him around. He's filming the boys. I was never really a guy who rode waves over 30 feet, maybe 35 feet pipeline, which is an 18-foot wave. Once it gets 20 feet, 40-foot faces, I've only really rode 2 or 3 waves at Waimea myself that were 40 foot on the face. And that was kind of it. I was like, I get more adrenaline getting barreled at Desert Point or doing an air at Rockies or just that pipeline wave. But yeah, just to be a part of that and watch it and see, I guess the point here is that it went from just misto waves with nobody out there, 1 or 2 guys at these spots, to this big tow surfing evolution of the sport. And then now it's gotten back to these guys back on their rhino chasers out there chasing just mountains.
And what do you think is the appeal of that style of surfing?
I mean, I'd say it's the highest level of risk and the highest level of reward and the highest level of respect. But then again, it's funny too, because I'd say half the big wave riders, if not 90% of them, now let's say 75% of the best big wave riders in the world, they wouldn't make a drop on a 6-foot wave at Chopo, or a 10. They wouldn't be able to figure out how to ride pipeline. Now, of course, Kai Lenny, Lucas Chumbo, Nathan Florence, Nathan Fletcher, Shane Dorian. Yeah, there's definitely some solid names of guys. And I guess, it's probably more like 50% now because of your Tory Meisters and your Russell Bjerkes and these guys. But at least half of the guys who are known as the best big wave riders in the world, I don't think they're a guy who would achieve like doing something like Matahi Dredley does at Chopo or something that Baron Mamiya does at Pipeline. They're not. They're a different animal. They're built differently. They have a different mindset. They have different goals. I mean, like Aaron Gold, that guy will paddle into the biggest wave you ever seen. But you're not going to catch him out at 8-foot pipeline trying to battle with the crowd and get spit out of a barrel. That's not what he does. That's not what he is looking for. Like Big Ben Wilkerson, these hellmen, they're kind of like that old school mentality of like, we ride big boards, we ride big waves, and we don't give a fuck.
I love that, mate. It's so true. It's such a chess match. You're a seafaring captain out there. You're navigating the ocean. You have to have extreme patience. You have to have self-reliance and resilience and be able to kind of problem solve on the fly. Like it's a radical and pure pursuit. You can't really capture it in film or photos because, a lot of the time these places, unless you got someone on a ski shooting, it's not even going to get captured. So it is an incredibly pure pursuit. And like you talk about the slab surfing kind of genre or style, like for me, that is the highest risk because, even when it's in the 4 to 8 foot range, like it's so easy to come undone on shallow rocks, hit your head, get knocked out, break legs, whatever. It's a very high risk brand of surfing. Those spots tend to be a lot more crowded as well. And it's a very different skill set. It's like you're under the ledge, it's quick twitch, it's knifing, it's essentially kind of a bodyboarding line on a stand-up equipment. It's so technical, and that's what makes athletes like your Billy Kempers, Russ Bjerks, Nate Florence's, John Florence's so remarkable. Albie Layer, Shane Dorian, etc. Tory Meister, the list is endless, but that really makes those guys quite special, in my opinion, that they can do both. They can manage 50-foot drops and waves at jaws, and that they can knife like psycho technical backdoor under the ledge scenarios at Pipeline and backdoor and elsewhere. It is remarkable that the heavy water landscape, those two athletes you mentioned, the two types of athletes, and then there's those that blend the genres. It's just an exciting thing to keep tabs on. I love the Big Wave World Tour concept. It kind of like it went between those two worlds, didn't it? It had the big wave locations, it had some big wave hollow situations, Jaws and Mavs to a degree, and the one in Chile, Punta de Lobos, is it the big left there? But it's such a sick concept, but it's kind of suffered a bit from the nature of those swells. They're long period. There's long lulls. It's not like a great spectator sport sometimes, but I would love to see a return of that. Like I want to see that type of athlete getting rewarded, and that side of the sport showcased in a way that us punters will have no ambition to be a part of that world. We can still kind of spectate and give these guys their dues, because it is really the pinnacle of the sport, in my opinion. Waves of consequence, waves of truth, as we say on this program.
Yeah, I mean, so if you look at somebody in middle America or middle Australia or away from the beach and they don't really know much about surfing, if they get to see the Eddie Aikau, or they get to see the Red Bull, the crazy, like the slabs in Sydney that like Russell Bjerke and those guys are riding, or the different waves around, I think they're gonna really enjoy and be captivated and drawn to like that type of surfing, rather than Huntington Beach or Manly or Newcastle or any of that stuff. It's kind of like what you're just saying. There's a few more different like areas in surfing. You have the slab hunters. You have like Mason Ho, who is definitely the most hilarious, most enjoyable person to watch on YouTube. I mean, bar none, Mason is the funnest guy to watch surfing. He's having the most fun. But Nathan Florence is pretty much the best rounded surfer on the planet. And then you've got someone like Kai Lenny, who can ride anything with his eyes closed, any type of board. He's a complete waterman. And then Lucas Chumbo is an example of somebody that's like, he can do air, like he could be on the CT and probably make it on the CT and stay on the CT, just because of waves like Pipeline and Tavarua and Chopo. He could probably make a final in 2 or 3 of those events. And so the slab surfer, it's funny because a lot of guys will comment like, how come this guy, where's the Aussie slab surfers in the Eddie? Why aren't they invited? Well, come on over and charge Waimea and make a name for yourself here, because riding the slabs there is not going to get you in the Eddie, unfortunately. But yeah, we have so many big wave locations around the world. It's hard to keep tabs on everyone and everything. But currently, between all the guys riding the slabs and all the guys riding the outer reefs and all the guys towing into the massive waves, there's 3 different types of big wave riders right now, in my opinion. There's the tow surfers, there's the paddle surfers, and there's the slab surfers. And that's cool because, those guys, everyone should be getting paid, because everybody's doing something that people enjoy watching, and they're risking their lives. And it's a lot different than, like I said, surfing some beach break at Huntington Beach or wherever it may be. And yeah, so more power to all those guys. And the world we live in today has more big wave riders and more underground chargers. I mean, every time I watch one of those slab segments over there in Australia, what's the waves? What's the crazy wave? Is it in New Zealand, or what's that one wave? The it's not ship sterns, but it's like is ship sterns Australia or ship sterns?
Yeah, Shippies is Tasmania.
Yes, there you go.
Yep.
That wave right there, that thing is just and there's like 2 or 3 of those waves. Correct me, like which ones? What are the ones? The ones.
The biggest, hollowest ones I think would be Shipsterns,
Yep.
Depot Bombing on the south coast. It's a pipeline-esque situation, but it requires kind of boards north of 8 foot to get into. The way it lurches, and this wave was considered unpaddleable for a long time. And the last, say, 5 to 10 years, it's become actually quite crowded as guys swing on 8.0s and kind of back to all this huge left tube. It's like that would be Russ Björk's kind of home wave in a sense.
That's the one. Whenever I see those big pipeline looking lefts and they're getting slapped and spit out.
And then
there's obviously the wave in Sydney that's kind of like Kobe Alberton and them kind of.
Ours, Cape Solander. Sorry, that's the right there, right on the rocks.
Yep.
That's where Cape Fear was held. That Russ won. And
yes.
Then you got Dead Man's in Manly there, which is a kind of Shipsterns-esque scenario, just not quite as dependably hollow. It's a bit more mutant, but yeah, you can still get the wave of your life out there.
Yeah, so just those alone, there's 3 or 4 crazy ass slabs that guys are risking their lives. And what I was going to say is, like, every time I pull up one of those videos and I'm like looking at, Steve this and Frank that, and I'm just like, I have no idea who these guys are, but I'm in awe over seeing what they're doing. They're gnarly.
Yeah, it's a gnarly scene down there. I mean, a lot of these guys are, freaking tradesmen, just like plumbers and carpenters who were nowhere really near being a professional surfer, but still managed to get themselves into these kind of waves and dedicate their lives to them. And it's an impressive culture of our own that we've got here.
I love it when I see like a big name surfer from Hawaii or from somewhere show up at these places, and they'll get a few and they'll do all right. But in general, the guys that are getting the heavy waves are guys you never even heard of. And it just shows you that, like, these guys, like you said, they're just underground chargers. And I'm all about the underdog. I love that.
Yeah, and that's the other thing about Australia is that we have a lot of Hawaiian style waves here. So it seems for a lot of people, the logic is like, why go to Hawaii when we've got those kinds of waves here? And there's so many of them that, the crowds tend to, spread out a bit, or there's windows out there where you just don't have to deal with the history and the localism and the culture that a wave like as famous as Pipeline has. It's such a nightmare for guys from here to get waves there. So a lot of people don't really bother anymore. And you see that, a lot of the elite pro surfers, your Craig Andersons, your Harry Bryants, Wade Goodall, Russ, these guys tend to just like move between West and East Coast and Southern Australia, chasing similar style waves to what you get in Hawaii. But it's just a lot easier for us to do that here.
Well, basically on that note, like the prestige of Hawaii has been kind of really, really without the Triple Crown, without the 3 months on the North Shore, all the surf houses, the big money industry houses, all these guys that used to come stay at the Billabong, the Quick, the this, the that, and come out here and were technically forced to come out here to continue having a contract. Now that these other waves, like you said, these guys don't have to come to Hawaii. They don't have to deal with the locals here, and they don't have to deal with their sponsors. Are like, fine, just go surf your slabs and your big waves, and you're still going to have a contract. So yeah, on that note, it's kind of opened up more pro surfers to be able to do, with social media and all this and that and different like
All right, so the connection just dropped out. Where were we, Liam?
well, I think we are just talking about how crazy all the different big wave riding spots in Australia are and around the world, and the slab hunters, and how there's a bunch of different types of pro surfers these days, the blogs and YouTube and this and that. But it's funny because like Russell Bjerke, like he seems to be still that core guy that just like does it and doesn't care if it gets on social media or ends up on a video or somewhere. I haven't seen his YouTube channel or him talking about himself too much. But yeah, I'd say Russell Bjerke and Nathan Florence. Those are like the two guys that I think are the biggest risk takers, or the most famous big risk takers. There's probably some other guys. Maybe Matahi Drele would be right there with him for what he does in Tahiti. But yeah, sky's the limit these days with what guys are doing, and it's for me, it's awesome. Like I literally go when I'm winding down, I'll go on YouTube and just put in surfing, and then I just scroll through, and I watch the Michael, what's the South African guy, the Mikey February.
Oh yeah.
I like that. I like what's the needless thing or whatever. Needle, what's the guy?
Need Essentials,
Corey.
Torrin Martin.
Yeah. I like.
Since we're getting absolutely rinsed by technological gibberish, let's just cut our losses and move on to your filmmaking career, man.
Go ahead.
Yeah, it's just an iconic period that you were charted with documenting. Like we're talking like the early Chopes forays. We're talking like 90s pipe. I reckon that period of pipe we talked about at the start of the program, but fuck, it's just so good, man. The Sean Briley kind of
Yep, I got that clip. Yep.
era. You got that clipped in you. There's like a 3-wave or 4-wave compilation that we can find on YouTube. I think it's Lost TV, but there's a couple of those waves that still
I have the whole segment. Yeah. So basically, I had a Japanese mate of mine, my best friend. He lived with me for about 10 years, and we traveled the world together. And he would go down the pipe with me in the dark. He would set up and start filming everything and anything until the sun set. And so he didn't miss a beat. So there's footage of like Braden Diaz and Tamayo Perry, Sean Briley. There was one segment called The Bomb Squad. It's in my The Bomb video. And that one has those crazy waves of Strider Wazalewski's actually in the segment as well. He was part of the 5 guys, I think, in this segment I did. But yeah, I spent about 5 to maybe almost 10 years just traveling the world and documenting everything and filming everything. And then I would go over to Mike Latronic's studio down in Velzeland, and I spent 100 hours in there editing every last clip, and then having to buy the music. And yeah, and I did pretty well. Sold some of the videos around the world. Japan was where I sold the most of them, and made my money back. So I was able to travel around. The reason I started doing them is because the Gorilla Grip was sponsoring me, and the Hawaii 01s, Hawaii 9091, those classic legendary videos. Tim Baniathan, good buddy of mine, Swell Chasers or whatever his Instagram is. Tim's a really cool guy. So that all stopped, and so I just started doing my own videos. And so I was in Tahiti in 1998, the second year of the Chopo event, and it was all of us guys there. And I got all the footage of that. I got one year, I got that boat that got sucked over backwards, the blue boat, the first time we ever saw a boat go over backwards. I'm the only guy who owns that footage, sold it to like different TV shows and stuff. And then just Indonesia, like Jilan, Padang. And I was in Desert Point. I went on a catamaran out to Desert Point in 1992, I believe it was. when the legendary moment when there was about 5 guys down there, the Aussie guy, and they were getting robbed, and he went to run out of his hut to try to get the guys who's robbed him, and he got his shoulder cut off. I don't know if you remember that legendary
I know
moment.
this story. I know this story. I've read about it in an issue of Barley Belly. It was what's the Brazilian guy, Pablo? I think he was
Yeah,
staying down
so
there
it's
at that point.
Pablo. Yeah, so it's Pablo and I believe maybe one or two guys from Cal, one or two guys from Oz. There was like a 5-pack of them that were just these core guys. Ironically, there's a girl who just won Haleiwa. The girl who just won Haleiwa event. Really good surfer. Her father was one of those guys. Her father's the OG Desert Point guy. I'll think of her name in a minute. Like it's not she just started riding for Rusty. She used to ride for like Hurley and things. She just won the Haleiwa event. But anyway, so I rocked up to Desert Point 2 days after that happened. And we were on a catamaran. And we got it all to ourselves. 0. The only person that we surfed with was Pablo. And Pablo moved a couple miles inland for safety reasons. And he would walk all the way out and come surf, but he had to leave like an hour before dark because he had to make his way back. So I got footage of me surfing Desert Point, no one around, just crazy moments way back when. This is, 30 years. What is this? 32 years ago, I was surfing Desert Point. And so I was fortunate to have my Japanese friend travel the world with me and document a lot of these iconic moments in surfing and really film everything that happened at Pipeline. And so it's nice to have those archives.
Yeah, man. So that's Zoe McDougal's old man. Is who you're talking about?
Yes.
And
There's a documentary. You watch that documentary on Desert Point and on those guys. There's something on YouTube or it's on Amazon Prime. Yeah, there's a movie. There's a movie about Desert Point, and it's her dad's in there, Zoe McDougal.
That's so interesting. And mate, Pablo is such an interesting guy. He's still there, still holding it down. Yep. We talk about these tube Gandhis, Mike Stewart, Kelly Slater. Pablo is very much in that conversation, a guy who has dedicated his life to the cone and is just this slick cue ball dude who's browned by the equatorial sun, still living over the backside of deserts as far as I know, and still getting drained from top to bottom of that reef. What a fucking legend.
So Pablo spent a lot of time that year when I was there. I gave him my board, gave him a 7.0, said, here you go.
Sick.
Whenever I travel, I took Ayala and Luke, Luke, Micah, Kala, those 4, me and my 2 sons, 6 of us. I took 8 kids out to deserts in like 2014, 10 years ago, 12 years ago. And we all brought 2 suitcases each, and we filled up all of our old clothes and all kinds of like stuff. And then we'd bring 50 boards. And when we left, we all left with just 1 surfboard and 1 pair of clothes. And it's called Leaving a Trail of Aloha. This is a whole long, this could be just a segment in itself. It's kind of living a purpose-driven life, knowing that when you travel, it really irritates the fuck out of me when I see all these pro surfers come to Hawaii and they leave with everything they brought when they should be like, when they paddle out. It's funny, you'll hear Dane Reynolds, a story about him. He's surfing V-Land and these little groms are burning him and he's like baffled. And it's like, give the kid who burns you, give him your surfboard. When you're at Pupukia Grill ordering lunch and that same grom you're just surfing with's behind you, buy him lunch. Give them all some deck pads and wetsuits and leashes, and go donate your boards to like the Sunset Elementary School fundraiser. Like, do something, give back. Don't just come here and take our precious resources. Stay in your $5,000 a day, house at off the wall and get all your food catered and go eat at Lele's and then just leave. No, it's when you travel, you want to get to know the local people and hang out with them. And especially when you go to third world countries or you go to places like Hawaii, where your career depends on what happens there. Leave a trail of aloha when you travel. That is the best thing you can do.
Mate, talking about leaving a trail of aloha, like during the late 90s, during these periods that you were making these films like The Bomb, this is also a period in which Hawaiian surfing is kind of like it's about to reach its peak in a sense with the Irons brothers, but they're just Groms at this period. And you've got your Braden Diaz's, you've got yourself, your brother, your Sean Briley's, your Tamayo Perry's. Like you've got this kind of like super like staunch rock and roll hardcore Hawaiian brand of surfing, and you guys, you're dominating the North Shore of Oahu. You're localizing it. You're making sure that the local guys get their waves first, and then you go into the other Polynesian islands like Tahiti, and you're on the pointy end of really charging and sending it and pushing the limits at Chopu. And for me, like it's a fascinating chapter because the lifestyle that everyone is leading at this point in time, it's not what I would call like a very like the surfing's amazing, but we didn't really have the mental health literacy. Like there's a lot of drugs and alcohol and bravado mixed in with the surf culture at this point, and it's not just limited to Hawaiians. The Australians were every bit as bad, and probably Americans too. I'm not exactly sure, but what was that like to be touring the world with a bunch of maniacs? Like you had the Irons brothers in particular. I know you've spent so much time with them over the years. They stayed with you in Oahu. You would have been staying together in Tahiti on these trips. Like, talk to us about what the culture and the kind of the culture of one-upmanship and charging and the hierarchy and how it all fit together when you had Braden Diaz and Tamayo Perry and Kalar Alexander, Carmele, this kind of Wolfpak scene, a mix of Kauai and North Shore Oahu guys, kind of running pipe and then also going to Chobes and kind of charging there like far out, man. What a crazy thing to be in the middle of as you were.
Yeah, I growing up in the 80s and the early 90s on the North Shore, it was the Dane Key Alohas and the Max Maderos and Marvin Foster and Johnny Boy, and these guys were the heavies of the heavies of the heavies. And it didn't matter what island you were from or where you lived, like everybody knew who the heaviest guys were and knew that you had to respect them. And that was one era that I was a part of in the start of my career. And then, 10, 15 years into my career, Bruce and Andy, helping them make their way on the North Shore here, helping them with a lot of things. They were, I definitely was a mentor to them. And then, just before social media and just before that type of stuff, there was the Wolfpak and the Pipeline Posse and all the Kauai boys. And, it's questionable for me. Like, I agree with part of it in the fact that pipeline needed to be regulated. But I also feel that there was surfers that were from here that still had enough of their stripes and their respect that they ultimately were, to me, the guys who should be getting their waves without thinking that, it kind of turned into a Kauai against Oahu for a little while there, and Maui was kind of in the middle of it, but not really. And there were some times when there was fights that went down between locals that really shouldn't have happened. There was times when, there was guys that are born and raised out here on the North Shore and every bit of a local, and they were getting beat up by guys, some of the Kauai boys. But it was kind of like there was parties that went down and there was crazy shit, and it ended up with fights. And there was a lot of like Dustin Barca's thing. I think he tells his stories and he was a part of it all. And obviously you got the head Kyborg and Kala and that Raiden. And so part of me liked the fact that they were regulating. The other part of me didn't really see that it needed to be that extreme. And I felt a little bit like I lost a little bit of my respect out in the lineup during that era. I had to deal with some shit too, with some of the guys that, you know, were a part of that whole scene. But like I had Michael Ho and Derek Ho, they always had my back, and those were the guys. No matter what all these guys want to do and everybody was doing, they're still the top hierarchy guys that no matter who comes to town, they're still the guys that command the most respect. But yeah, there was a lot of shit that went on, a lot of drugs, a lot of partying, a lot of fighting. You know, it was not an easy, like every house, every surf house would have a huge party. And there's some crazy stories of some crazy parties at the Oakley house and at the Volcom house and at the Billabong house. There's some shit went down. A lot of shit went down. A lot of guys got fucking beat the fuck up. And a lot of big name people in the industry and in surfing, they had some issues. They had some problems. They got some slaps. And yeah, I think that was a little bit of a bad mark on surfing in a way, because people came to the North Shore and they were scared. But I think there's a certain level of that was also needed. But yeah, for me, it was kind of towards the end of my career when a lot of this, I was in the middle of my career and then also towards the end of my career, but I was a part of the whole thing. And we were all in Tahiti. It was like, we all were in Tahiti at the end of the road. And it was, I remember Corey Lopez and Andy getting so fucked up. They were fighting like right there. Everybody's watching. Those guys would just brawl. And then obviously Bruce and Andy, they had it out for each other. And yeah, there was a lot of shit that went down. It didn't matter where the Hawaiians were. They would definitely, you know, even like Desert Point, you know, lots of fights with a lot of Brazilians and a lot of, it's crazy. You'll go to Desert Point and there'll be 20 Brazilians that are black belts and they're 6'2" and just massive animals. Not a lot of them can't really surf that well, but some of them do. And they could care less who the fuck you are. They're going to fucking slap you and burn you. And we see it to this day. Like you see guys at Desert Point and they're getting, guys that are really respected here in Hawaii are getting burned. And these Brazilians is kind of like the Aussies, like that you would say that they're never going to come to Hawaii, so they could care less. They have no respect for whoever you are, because they don't care about Hawaii. And that's the difference. Is back in the day, if you were a Hawaiian and you were a Denki Aloha or a Marvin Foster or like a big name Hawaiian, Derek Ho, when you traveled the world, everybody got the ultimate respect everywhere they went. It's a lot different now.
Yeah, and it's interesting to kind of compare the generations of Hawaiian surfing and localism. You know, obviously you got the busting down the door chapter with the black shorts, and you know, Eddie and Clyde Eichow coming to the defense of Rabbit and PT and that crew are like not before they got the shit kicked out of them, but you know, in some ways, like you could see why that happened. Definitely some cultural differences there that were irreconcilable without a solid beating. And then it kind of goes through the 80s, all those names you mentioned, 80s, 90s, that was your generation, your crew, or the guys just above you, Dane Keelow, Marvin Foster, Mickey Nielsen, etc., Johnny Boy Gomes. And then things get really weird through the 90s, because I feel like drugs become a really big part of the scene as well. And it seems to me that like the culture is lost from the localism, and it becomes more about just greed and gluttony and toxic masculinity and like just standing over people for the sake of standing over them. You know, how big was the drug scene, and how much of a role did that play in the volatility of the North Shore during that 90s kind of period and onwards?
Yeah, 90s and into the 2000s, it was crazy. I mean, you name, I'll tell you, go through the top 16 surfers, top 20 surfers, 90% of them they were on a roll. They were going big. They were partying for nights. Hawaii was the end of the year. It was time to party. All these guys were winning title. There was a party for everything. You won the Sunset, you won Haleiwa. There's a party who won the XL Pro, who won the Haleiwa Pro, who won the Sunset Pro, who won the Pipe Masters, who won the Triple Crown. You made I don't care, you're from the Billabong house and you made the final. It's Ryan Callahan. He got in the final or won the trials. They're partying for everything you can think of. And there was a lot of fights, a lot of drugs, a lot of alcohol, a lot of drama. And then there became a point where there was some, chicks getting maybe raped and shit, and people getting drugged and beat up and robbed, and houses getting robbed, like robbing all their boards and taxing, like a bunch of the kids showing up, a bunch of the boys showing up at certain houses and taxing people. So there was a lot of drama and a lot of shit went down. It's like night and day these days. There's like literally there's 3 parties a year instead of 30. There's 3 fights a year instead of 30. There's 3 surf houses rather than 30. Everything has just mellowed out. The North Shore is nothing like it was. And the stripes you earn and the respect and the whole, like, coming to the North Shore for the 6 weeks or 2-3 months and these guys leaving with the tails between their legs because they couldn't perform, or these other guys like achieving greatness. Like, it's sad, but that's all gone. There won't be another Andy Irons who wins the Pipe Masters, Triple Crown, and World Title all in one day. That era, you can never repeat that era. The Kelly Slater, Andy Irons era, the Parco and Mick and the drama, the world titles, just all the stuff that went down with all the boys, and just gangs of teams of gangs of like the Ruka house and the Quick house and the Billabong house and the Oakley house and the Red Bull house. And these houses they had team managers that were getting paid good money. They had 20 team riders in these houses on any given part of the winter. And the money was a lot of money. And a lot of that money turned into a lot of partying.
Mm-hmm. And Andy, man, like, talk to us about AI. I mean, you were such a big part of his evolution on the North Shore, and you watched him win world titles against the greatest of all time, and like far out. You talk about partying, like frick, the after parties from those world titles at the Volcom House and whatnot are the stuff of legend. Like, what are your memories of AI? Like, talk to us about your relationship with him from, like when you first met him right through the years, and what it was like to kind of watch, I guess, his demise, as sad as it was, but the writing was probably on the wall at different points. I imagine for those close to him, you would have known he was struggling with substance abuse issues. And yeah, it must have been amazing at times to watch his rise, but also very depressing and sad to watch his demise.
Yeah, I mean, as young kids, when they 10, 11 years old, 9, 10 years old, when they came to stay with me in like 1986, 87, I took care of them for a few years, and they were just such good surfers, and such like, growing up on Kauai on the North Shore, they were pretty sheltered kids and pretty mellow kids. And it's kind of like that. It's kind of like when you're a movie star or you're a musician, like just a high profile person, and you're given all this money and fame, and everybody wants to be your friend, and they all want to hang out. I'd say half the guys who ran with those guys were just running for the party. He had his few genuine friends that genuinely cared about him and genuinely didn't want to see them go down the wrong path. But everybody was kind of caught up in that, and it was sad that, like, obviously the end of it all was just crazy, but there was periods there where it seemed like he was definitely suffering from a lot of depression and medicating because of it, and nobody really, I don't know, it seemed like nobody really cared in a way, or if they did, they were caught up in it themselves. So the real people that really needed to make sure he was okay and make sure to help him on the right path were kind of non-existent, I think, or I don't know. It was just, but yeah, I I got to see them grow up young age and got to see them, accomplish everything they've accomplished. And Bruce and Andy became two of the best ever by far. And there will never be another Andy. And there'll never be that rivalry with Slater and Andy. It's like you can talk about John and Gabriel and Parco and or Mick and Taj or these rivalries over the years, but I really don't think there's anything that'll ever reach that level of how big surfing was and how big the North Shore and the Triple Crown and the Pipe Masters and the rivalries between them and the heats that they battled and the world titles that they won. And Andy had Slater's number, and he's the only guy who really had Slater's number when Slater was the king as well. So it's kind of like it's like if you look at basketball, it's like Jordan and Pippen and Kobe and LeBron James. Like, there's never going to be another Jordan and Pippen and those Bulls of the 80s and all that. And there's certain sports that but it's very hard to ever replicate what went on and never bring it to that level, which is the level they were at.
And you're so invested in the present day of Hawaiian surfing, the future of Hawaiian surfing. You're involved in a bunch of surf contests, surf events, surf movements. You've raised two beautiful and super talented boys, Mackay, incredible surfer, Landon, incredible surfer, and reggae artist, like sick artist. Yala Stewart, we mentioned earlier as well. Like, how big a part of your role now is about steering kids away from that lifestyle of alcohol, drugs, degeneracy, like undiagnosed mental illness, giving them the tools and the love and the support to have a flourishing career, but kind of breaking that archetype that we all grew up kind of admiring, which was the surf hard, party hard archetype, which it turned out to be so toxic ultimately. Yeah, like, how do you kind of manage that with your current crop of Hawaiian surfers, making sure that they're keeping the mind as healthy as the body and staying on purpose, on track, and staying clean?
Well, yeah, over the last 10 years, we've had a bunch of surfers OD on heroin and a bunch of surfers, hang themselves, and a bunch of surfers just like Kalani David, like going from one of the best surf skaters on the planet, high profile, just amazing kid, superstar kid, and just had everything. And then he ends up getting some diagnosis it's a different story with him. It wasn't really a drug problem. It was a family thing, and then his health issues and getting seizures, and then he passed away in Costa Rica. And that really hits hard to a lot of the kids out here. He was very close to a lot of people. Kala Alexander lost his son. That was a major sad thing that happened. There's another guy, Chaz Chittister. He was like my nephew. He was a Volcom rider. It's like with Dusty Payne and all those guys, Volcom team rider. He OD'd. He's my grandson's named after him. He was like my son. when he was 18, I took him and Mason Ho and all these guys and Tonino Benson and took them to Europe and took the kids around. I've always traveled with, helped all the kids as I travel and take Uncle Liam taking them on trips. But right now, like we've lost a lot of people, just like in Australia. There's a lot of people that during that stupid COVID thing and before and after, and like Chris Davison comes to mind. In Brazil, a lot of guys losing their lives. So yeah, right now the current crop of surfers coming out of Hawaii from like 15 to 25, I don't think, maybe only one or two of them might even be struggling with any substance or alcohol. So 90% of them are straight and narrow, like our best surfers right now. Whether it's Barron, whether it's Noah Beshin, whether it's Makana Pang and those kids, that crew, and then whether it's these younger guys coming up and these Cheyenne Crawfords and there's Luke trying to think, he rides for Rip Curl, really good surfer. They're all good. They're all pretty much like, I'll ask them, hey, what do you guys smoke? You guys party? What do you guys do? What's the deal? Oh, no. So I think they can see like what happened with somebody like Slater, with him following the path of, all you have to do is really look at the surfers from the past generations and pinpoint which ones are the ones you want to be like and why do you want to be like them, and realize that the ones who made it the farthest are the ones who really didn't get crazy with the partying. So yeah, I'll always tell the kid, as much as I can, I'll tell kids, look, man, you're not going to go nowhere if you end up on any of these substances. But it's hard. The North Shore it's a crack den.
Yeah, man.
Meth. Yeah.
The meth is a serious issue there. It's pretty mind blowing, and unsurprising in some ways when you deal with a cost of living situation. You're dealing with a part of America essentially where the cost of living's so high that native Hawaiians are moving to like the Las Vegas fucking desert and shit because they can't afford to live in their own islands. And I think that in itself breeds a kind of nihilism when the rich are getting richer and the poor are getting the picture and having to move out of homes and live in tents and or move to the American mainland. It just breeds a nihilism and well, fuck it, I may as well smoke meth because my life's shit. And there does seem to be that kind of feeling in Hawaii. When I was there in February, I was kind of shocked by the general poor health of a lot of people. Obviously around the coast where we're surfing and stuff, people are generally pretty fit and healthy, but you only got to drive 15 minutes inland and you're starting to see that American empire of fast food and shit food and the cost of living's off the Richter scale. And it's just it's unsurprising to see the level of social ills dominating the Hawaiian landscape, as sad as that is, all of it imported from Babylon. It fucking sucks, man.
Well, we have I believe Hawaii became the most corrupt state in the United States like a year or two ago. I think we surpassed Chicago.
That's insane.
Our government is so corrupt, it's ridiculous. And all the shady shit that goes on, all the underground activity that goes on in all the big cities around the world. But it's pretty sad here in Hawaii how corrupt our state is.
Yeah, and it's unbelievably seedy, Waikiki, Honolulu, parts of Hawaii. You picture it as this Pacific Polynesian paradise, but man, it's got this kind of really gross, decrepit American style architecture and economic system that's just it's such a shame. I can relate to it a little bit. Parts of Australia, we're also in the Asia Pacific, we have a similar kind of cultural demographic, a lot of Polynesians and Asians, and some of those same system failures that you guys are dealing with there that manifest in the same ways with meth use and social inequality. But mate, What's on your plate currently? What's the future hold before I let you go? Like you've been so generous with your time. What do you want to touch on before I'll leave you?
Well, we got the Pipe Masters waiting period started today. We've got the Eddie Cow waiting period starting in 7 days. We've got the backdoor shootout coming up in about 3 weeks. Then we got the Pipe Pro. So we do have some things going on here on the North Shore. We haven't had the greatest season yet. We've had some good 6 to 8 foot days, pipeline and stuff like that. We're just waiting for things to really detonate here. So yeah, just going to be enjoying that. I own a few surf shops out here on the North Shore. I've been in business at Sharks Cove for 23 years. Opened in 2001. My wife opened the store. So I run businesses. I'm able to really give a lot of like jobs to all the kids and sponsor kids, and living a purpose is, for me, I just try to live a purpose-driven life. The purpose-driven life is basically you wake up every day and you go to bed every night doing at least one thing to make the world a better place. And that's as little as opening a door for an old lady at the market, or go to Starbucks in the drive-thru. I go to Coffee Bean and I give them $20 and I say, pass it forward. The next people in line get free drinks. Those are cool little things that you can just kind of get people to know that, hey, you can do cool things. And just giving surfboards to kids. And I'll have kids that'll come in and they're asking about a board and wondering about trying to get their mom to get some money for a board. And I'm just like, you know what, take that board. That's you. That's on me. And to be able to have the opportunity to do those things, because I came from very humble beginnings, and I was taught aloha, leaving a trail of aloha when you travel. When you Aussie guys come to Hawaii, sell me your boards, give me a good deal. It's going to go to a good place. Back in the day, I used to get so many boards from JS and DHD and all the different companies. There would be 100 JSs in the garage at the Billabong house, and I'd go over there and meet with Jason, and I'd buy all the boards, and I'd put them in my shop, all the Parcos and everybody. That era's done. There's these guys are buying their boards now, and so I can understand they can't all leave a trail of aloha and give away all their boards, but they should at least give away one while they're here, or buy a little kid a lunch or something like that, or give a wave. When a kid drops in on you on a wave, say, hey man, meet me at Pupake Grill. I'll buy you lunch later. Nice to meet you. I'm Steve. Whatever. Just continue to, in the end of the day, I've had some accolades in my surfing. I could care less really about being remembered for those. I'd like to be remembered for somebody who actually had a voice that got shit done, and that was a facilitator of giving back to the sport that gave me everything.
Unreal, mate. Unreal. Great message and a life well lived. Thanks so much for your time.
Aloha.